Birmingham Blitz by Annie Murray. Read by Frances Barber. August 1939. Mom! Silence. Mom! What? Come up quick! Lola's dead! We never usually called her Lola, but I couldn't call her Granny now she'd gone. Hang on a tick, Genie. Let me put this on the gas. She dragged herself up the stairs eventually, muttering. She would go on a Saturday morning when your dad's off playing soldiers, as if I haven't got enough on me plate. Mom bent over the bed, picked up one of Lola's hands like she would a dead rat, and felt for a pulse. She's gone. She dropped the hand, staring at Lola's grey old face. You'll have to clean her up, Genie. I couldn't do it. It'd make me bad. So I washed my dead granny that baking hot afternoon. You have to do your duty to the dead, and Mom wouldn't lift a finger for us so long as I was around to do it. Mom chose to name me Eugenie Victoria Josephine Watkins. I don't suppose Dad had any say in the matter. At my christening in 1924, he leaned over my pram, a father for the first time. She'll go far, he said, chucking my cheek. Nanny Rawson, my other grandmother, stood just behind him. With a gob full of names like that, she'll need to. I don't know how far he thought I was going, but by 1939, none of us had got further than Brunswick Road, Balsall Heath, where we had a back door as well as a front, and our very own flush toilet in the garden. I lived with my mum, Doreen, and my dad, Victor, who was a bus driver, my brother Eric, 8 years younger, and Mum's brother, Uncle Len, and Lola, of course, up until now. Nanny Rawson lived half a mile away in Highgate. Len stopped with her up until Mum's sister, Auntie Lil, had to move back there with her kids. Then Len came to live with us. He wasn't quite the full shilling Uncle Len. Must have been born that way. He was an enormous bloke. Didn't just come into a room, he took up half of it. He was all right, sweet-natured and loved to hear people laugh. Not that living with Mum and Dad was ideal on that score. He came to us a few months after Lola'd arrived, so our terraced house started to get crowded. Lola and I'd had a room each, and Eric slept in with Mum and Dad at the front. But when Len arrived, everything had to be juggled around. Eric'll stay in with us, Mum decreed. You'll have to bunk up with Lola. It'll only be for a bit. She can't last much longer. Len was no trouble, though. Just sat about or played football with Eric and me or looked through Eric's comics. I grew ever so fond of him. He was more like a big brother than a grown-up man. Mum had days sometimes when she just sat in a chair staring at the walls. I know she never loved my dad, not even when they first got married. Auntie Lil always said Mum married him to keep up with her. When I used to hear them talking about their lives, Lil and Mum would say, and then I married Victor. The way she might have said, and then I died. A lot of women didn't expect more than they got, but she did. For Eric and me, there was Nanny Rawson. She was always pleased to see us. When Mum sat listless in her chair, we'd often as not shoot up the Moseley Road to our Nan's, me holding Eric's hand to keep him off the road. Nanny Rawson would give us a piece with jam and let us play out in the yard with the neighbours' kids. We'd stay until it was nearly time for bed. When we got home, sometimes Mum would cook for us. Sometimes she was still sitting in her chair. 'Cause all the family were at Lola's funeral. Dad got back from his camp with the Territorials 2 days earlier. He joined a year before, after the Munich crisis. It got him out of the house one evening a week and some weekends. Must have been restful for him. Life was barely worth living in our house the morning we buried Lola. Mum had given Dad hell ever since Lola passed on because he hadn't been there. I couldn't help it, Doreen, he snapped at her finally. I had to go. There's going to be a war soon. There's not going to be a war, Mum sneered. They won't let it happen. She'd been up since the crack of dawn cutting bread for sandwiches. Good job it was only sandwiches because she wasn't the world's greatest cook. "Who's coming then?" I asked. Mom sniffed. "Don't know for sure, but some of them'll most likely turn up." Them were Dad's brothers and sisters who were scattered about Birmingham. We never saw them, but Mom was determined that she was a cut above whoever might turn up, so it was out with a tin of salmon and the house had to be spotless. My mum had dreams of living out on one of the new estates, new houses with bathrooms and neat little gardens. But we weren't half as hard up as some of the neighbours. At least she had a back and a front room and a patch of garden. It was Nan who'd arranged everything for Lola. The plot in the cemetery, registering the death, the hearse. Mum had one of her times of deciding she couldn't cope. But she was the one in charge today, dispensing orders. The house filled up with shouting. "Genie, I want you out scrubbing the front step. Eric, get your hands off. Look, the table's all smears now." "I don't mean to," Eric snivelled, clutching his ear. "Genie, get him out of here. Keep him out of my way. And Lenny, sit down, will you? You're getting me all mithered." Len still had the grin stuck on his face that had been there since Monday when he got his first ever job, aged 29, packing shells at the Austin Works. "You'd best go in the garden for a bit," I advised Eric. "I've got to scrub the step." "Can't I come and watch you, Genie?" "If you have to." When I completed my chore, I was allowed to get changed. I had one decent dress which Mum had knocked up on her old Vesta machine, a pale blue shirt-waister. I felt awkward in that dress. Mum had managed to get the waist too high. I suppose I didn't think of myself as a girl, not a proper one like my friend Teresa. I was so skinny. I was supposed to be a woman by now, getting bosoms and acting grown-up. After all, I was out at work. But it was all a flaming nuisance to my mind. Your monthly coming on, rags chafing in your knickers. I didn't half wish I was a boy sometimes. Downstairs in the back room, I peeped in the oval mirror. My face looked back at me from the glass. Big grey eyes, pointy nose, straight brown hair. I gave myself a smile. Dad emerged from the stairs. "You look a picture, Genie. Be nice to see you doll yourself up more often." I went pink. Mum had been fussing on the way. "Victor, your tie's not straight. Genie, take Len into the church and make sure he behaves himself. Eric, for pity's sake, stop sniffing." They were all waiting outside St Paul's Church in their Sunday best, giving off a smell of mothballs. Nanny Rawson had on a navy straw hat and a mud-coloured coat. There were a group of 4 people in shabby clothes, and when Dad went to them, I realised these were the uncles and an auntie we never saw. He shook each of their hands. "All right, are you?" And then couldn't think of anything else to say. Mum was looking down her nose at them, and they shifted about and looked embarrassed. I went and shook hands too, and one of the men kissed me and said, "Hello, Eugenie." Lil was there with her kids. She had a wide black hat on with a brim. Mum sidled up to her, nodding at the hat. "Cashed in your pawn ticket in time, did you?" "Pack it in," Nan hissed. "They're staring at us." She nodded towards the aunt and uncles. "Doreen, go in," Nan commanded, "and see if you can keep your gob shut." "Come along, Eric." Mum flounced off, yanking Eric along behind. Dad followed me in with Len. No one wanted to sit in the front row, so we filed into the second lot of pews. Len's knees were touching the back of the pew in front, his enormous thighs pressed against mine. He kept looking round at me, grinning. "It's nice, this Genie, ain't it?" I think he liked the candles and the coloured glass. At last the Reverend started in on his prayers. "We brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we carry nothing out." Dad blew his nose a lot. He'd tried to do his best for her. After all, she was his mom. I looked across at the coffin as we stood up and started in on Abide With Me. Poor old Lola. Mom stirred the teapot in the kitchen. "Take these, will you, Genie?" I carried the sandwiches through. Everyone was crushed into the front room except Lil, who'd taken the kids out to let off steam in the garden. It went all right, just about. Dad's brothers and sister were very jolly, and the uncles loosened their ties and stood about smoking and sweating. They ate all they could and departed even more awkward than when they arrived, leaving our family to get on in our usual affectionate way. I stuck with Len and brought him more helpings of food because he could eat forever, his mouth churning away like a mincer. Lil had brought the kids back in. She was a stunner, our Lil. Mum had always been jealous of her. I think part of her jealousy was Lil moving back in with Nan after her husband died. Patrick Heaney was his name. Patsy. Mum never liked him. Doesn't like the Irish, full stop. And his other crime was to make Lil happy. Patsy got into a fight one night, took a nasty bang on the head. He was never the same after. Turned to booze, had fits. Next thing, they were dragging him out of the canal. It was a shame. Lil was in pieces. But at least while he was alive, she'd had something with Patsy that Mum had never had. You could see it in their eyes. She'd sit in his lap, even after little Patsy was born. But she couldn't cope on her own, what with holding down a job and the kids. Poor Lil. Never get a second to yourself with kids, do you? Lil snapped. Can't even fart in peace? How about another cup of tea, Dor? You know where the kettle is? Mum said with her usual charm. I'll get it. I went into the kitchen. When I got back with the tray, Nan was saying, It's the practice run Saturday, ain't it? I'm not sending my kids nowhere, Lil said. Whatever Adolf bloody Hitler's planning. Hitler this, Hitler that, all we ever heard nowadays. Sending him to live with complete strangers. Lil was on her high horse. That's what we're supposed to be doing, isn't it? Do you want your kids bombed and gassed like they say they will be? But you're sending him off, poor little thing. Eric looked about as depressed as anyone would be. I went and sat by him. Is she going to send me away? He had tears in his eyes. Where am I going? Somewhere nice, I expect. In the country. It'll be all right. Sit yourselves down, Nan was saying. As a mark of respect to Lola, we'll have a song. Nan got her squeeze box out and sat with it on her lap. Doreen, Lil, stand up. You sing along too, Len. I got a pack of cards and played with Eric, and the two loving sisters started on a song. Nan was fantastic on the accordion. Mom, Lil and Nanny Rawson all had good strong voices. People called them the Andrews sisters, and they did a turn in the pub now and again. Times when they sang were mostly the only occasions when they weren't arguing. So they stood in our front room with the sunlight fading and sang The Rose of Picardy and Tarara Bumdier, and then that new song, The Lambeth Walk. Lil looked so pretty, and Nan's face was softer than usual, and Len was swaying from side to side in his chair. Mom looked almost happy while the music was going on. I saw Dad watching her and there were tears in his eyes. Shook me a bit, that. I wondered whether he was thinking that he might soon have to go away. People were still saying there wasn't going to be a war. But if there wasn't, what was all this for? Trenches in the parks, blackout curtains and sending the kids away? We'd had the gas masks months. They looked a bit of a joke with their mouse faces. I didn't really understand about war. All I knew was that everyone was living on their nerves. Mum was on at Dad because he might have to go away. What do you have to go and join the TA for? How'll I manage without you? There was a feeling about, excited and deadly serious at the same time, building up like the tension in a spring. I was working in a pawn shop in Highgate. One evening after work, when I walked through the front door, I knew something was different. I could hear a voice in the back room, a man's voice, posh. I pushed the door open. They were all sat around the table, Mom, Dad, Eric and Len. And in the middle of the table, shiny and new, there she was. Shh, they said. The man's voice went on for a moment longer. Then music started to trickle out into the room. I tiptoed closer and stared. It was a beautiful thing, a couple of feet long, encased in veneered wood. On the front was the speaker, the overlaid wood cut into a sunburst. Set into a metal surround was the dial with little ebony knobs. Out from it were coming the sounds of violins and trumpets and other instruments, all pitching in together. It gave me a queer feeling. Even Len went quiet. "Whose is it?" "Len's. He bought it. First wage packet." Len looked as if he was going to burst, head nodding up and down like crazy. I squeezed his shoulder. "It's really smashing." Next day, Mom dragged Eric off for his evacuation rehearsal. Eric carrying a small holdall for his clothes and a little bag for his gas mask. It was a peaceful morning. Dad sat reading the Sports Argus and then settled himself down by his wireless, twiddling the dial. I was supposed to be cooking lunch, but I sat down for a bit too. Worries about Eric kept flickering through my mind. I thought about my family all being split up. "Dad?" "If there's a war, will you have to go straight away?" He laid the paper down. "Could be any time now, love." Oh. Music carried on quietly behind us. "You'll look after your mother for me, won't you?" I nodded and he looked away again. "You're a good wench." That morning, I had a singer who was to become one of my favourites. The second she'd finished, Len pointed at the wireless and said, "Gloria." "What you on about, Len? They said her name was Anne Shelton." He shook his head hard and pointed again. "Gloria!" I realised he meant the wireless itself, and I saw how much it suited her. Glorious Gloria. From then on, she was never known as anything else. Those last days of August, we were bombarded with instructions. Leaflets through the door, the papers, and of course Gloria, all giving out advice and information. Gloria gave us relief from it too, letting our minds slip away into plays and stories and songs. Then, on the 31st of August, Dad brought home the Birmingham Mail. There was a banner across the front. "Evacuation tomorrow. Britain awaits Hitler's reply." September 1939. Eric had to leave as soon as he'd had breakfast. His little bag and his gas mask stood forlornly in the hall. He clung to me, bawling his eyes out. "Can't you come with me, sis?" he sobbed. "I've got to get to work, Eric. Mom'll look after you. We'll see you soon. Won't be for long." I did my best to hide my tears until they were away down the road. I stood waving him off, him turning, cap on his head, streaks of tears on his cheeks. He waved right to the corner. Then they were gone. I had a proper cry then. Dad had gone out the back. I suppose he was upset too. After, I blew my nose and hurried to work. Palmer's was on the Moseley Road, its golden balls hanging outside. It was a dark little shop and stank of frowsty clothes. Mr. Palmer was 50-something, with a paunch and grey hair greased flat to his head. "Ready for the Friday rush, Genie?" he said as I walked in. I liked Fridays. Payday, everyone coming in to redeem the Sunday outfits they'd pawned on Monday for a bit of extra to see them through the week. "Here I am again," one lady used to say. In, out, quick as me old man on a Saturday night." Took me a minute to work out what she was on about. I started tidying bits and bobs, dusting the crocks. As I was tidying, I heard a click and a voice said, "We're at Waterloo Station." My head jerked up. A wireless. Mr. Palmer nodded, pleased with himself. It was at the end of the counter, a little box with a curved top. The reception was quite clear. "Thought I'd bring it in," he said. "Didn't want to miss anything." "The train's in," the voice was saying, "and the children are just arriving. The tiny tots in front. They're all merry and bright. We haven't had a single child crying. I think they're looking forward to this little adventure. The whistle goes, the children are looking out, and in a moment this train moves out to an unknown destination." We heard the sound of the train chugging and finally dying away. I thought of Eric sobbing his little heart out. Was he the only child in England not merry and bright? "You all right?" Mr. Palmer asked. He turned a knob and the wireless went off. "It's my brother Eric. He's 8. He's gone today." Mr. Palmer shook his head. "Terrible. Mind you, if my kids were young, I'd want 'em out of it. Anyway," he winked at me, "it'll be finished by Christmas." The rush started just like any normal weekend. Soon, there was quite a crowd in the shop waiting with their tickets. At 10:30, Mr. Palmer switched on the wireless. "It's news time!" The customers in the shop stood stock still as we heard it. The Germans had invaded Poland. One lady was crying. Her son was 20 and she hadn't forgotten the last war. Lost 2 brothers. What about my dad? I wondered. After work, I went to my nan's. Belgrave Road was a wide street sloping down from the Moseley Road. Nan lived at the top, had done for years, and had brought up 3 children, not knowing from one day to the next if my grandad would be in work or out of it, drunk or sober. "It was hand to mouth," Mum would say. "Until she got that shop, your Nan was doing people's washing to make ends meet." On the corner stood the Belgrave Hotel, and Nan's shop was across the road with a cobbled entry along the side which ran into the yard. The shop's windows had advertisements stuck to them, so you could hardly see in or out. Her house, which backed onto the shop, was 3 floors, 1 room on each. In the downstairs, you could walk through the scullery, lift up a little wooden counter, and you were in the shop. Nan's shop had seemed like a magic palace to me when I was a kid. She sold everything you could think of: sweets, kids' trousers, balls of string. I was almost there when the door flew open, bell jangling, and Nanny Rawson loomed in the doorway. "What you doing here?" she demanded. "Come to see you, what else?" Nan folded her arms. "You'd best get home. They've started calling up the territorials. Your dad's already gone." "Gone? Where?" She softened. "Not far away. He'll be back to see you. Come on." She led me through into the house. "Your mother'll cope while you have a cup of tea." While she brewed up, I went and looked out of the door into the yard. Little Patsy, Tom and Kathleen were playing up the far end. I sat down. Within minutes, we heard Lil back from work. "All right," she was saying to the kids. "Let me at least get in through the sodding door." She flung herself down and put a hand over her eyes. "Me head's fit to split." Nan handed her a cup of tea. "You having second thoughts about sending the kids?" "No, I'm not." Lil sat upright quick as a flash. "Sending the poor little mites off to fend for themselves?" At that moment, the 3 poor little mites roared in through the door. "Mom, we're starving." "I've only just got in," Lil yelled. "You can push off out of here till your tea's ready." The room emptied again. Lil groaned, then sat up and drank her tea. "Victor's gone," Nan told her. "Dor was here earlier in a state. Called him up straight away." Lil stared at her. "I didn't think it'd be so soon. They haven't said there's going to be a war yet. Not for sure." "Looks mighty like it, though." Nan sat on her chair sipping tea. "I've cleared out the cellar." "What for? What d'you think for? I'm not going out into those public shelters. There's not much space, but it'll have to do. I've given it a scrub." "Charming. Reduced to sitting in the cellar." "Want some bread and scrape, Genie?" Nan asked. "No, I'm all right, Tar." "Then you better be moving on. Got to see to this blackout palaver tonight. Your mother won't want to do that all on her own." I found Mum in tears, of course, with Len taking not the blindest bit of notice. Soon as he got in from work, he usually sat down by Gloria, without even washing his hands, unless we nagged him. There was no sign of tea on the go. Mum dabbed at her eyes. "First I've got no son, and now I haven't got an husband." She clicked the stair door open and disappeared upstairs, slamming it behind her. I was really fed up with her. I suppose this means I'm cooking tea. There was liver in the kitchen. I started chopping onions. Len fiddled with Gloria until music came streaming from her. He beamed. "'S nice, this Genie, ain't it?" When it was ready, I dished up and calmed Mum down. As the light was waning outside, she went round the windows, pulling all the black curtains she'd made. "This should have been done earlier," she said accusingly. "I'll have to do upstairs tomorrow." My liver and onions was no worse than Mum's, but she still turned her nose up at it. "Gravy's lumpy, and how'd you get the liver so hard?" The 9 o'clock bulletin came on, but there was nothing new. When we turned Gloria off to go up to bed, it was eerily quiet. There wasn't a sound from outside. It had been a golden afternoon, lit by autumn sun. What's up now? I wondered, stepping in from work that evening. The house was quiet. They were all outside. At the end of the garden stood Mom, Len and Mr. Taylor from 2 houses along. They were all looking at a big loop of corrugated iron which was leant up against the fence. The Anderson shelter had arrived. "Hello, Genie," Len boomed across at me. Mom was all worked up. "Isn't this just the limit? It's just like Victor to go away the day before the shelter gets here. Am I going to cope with this?" "I'll sort it out for you," Mr. Taylor said. "Soon as I've finished my own. Look, you just have to dig down and set the base into the ground. Then you put the soil back over the top and Bob's your uncle." Len already had the spade. "He could do it if I show him," Mr. Taylor went on. "Big, strong lad." Mom was hugging her waist. "Looks more like a dog kennel. Don't fancy sitting out in that of a night." "I'll come and give Len a hand finishing it tomorrow," Mr. Taylor said. "How's that?" Mom nodded. "I've got to finish those flaming blinds." When we got inside, Len switched on Gloria. The organ music which faded up suddenly stopped. "This is the BBC Home Service. Here is the 6 o'clock news." "Shh," I said. "Listen." Everyone stood still. The government had given a final ultimatum to Hitler. Withdraw from Poland or we declare war. They'd given him until the next morning. I didn't know whether to be excited or frightened. Mom still didn't manage to black out the whole house by sundown. She wasn't very good at sewing either. We ate scrambled egg and potatoes. It was a queer feeling sitting there with the windows all muffled. Made you feel cut off as if you were in prison. Mum said she couldn't stand the sight of any more sewing, so we sat round Gloria and sang along with "We'll gather violets in the spring" and "Keep young and beautiful if you want to be loved." We wondered what tomorrow would bring. The Prime Minister was due to speak at 11. Mom was at a machine again in the front, tickety-tick, and I was stuck at the sink. Len was out digging. I switched Gloria on and heard a band playing. "What time is it?" Mom called through. 5 to 11. There was a knock at the front door. Peeping into the hall, I saw Molly and Gladys Bender from across the road. They stood there with grins on their faces, each of them the size of a gasometer, like a couple of mad March hares. Gladys was Molly's mom. "Mr. Taylor said there's to be an announcement," Gladys said. "Only we haven't got a wireless." All Mom could really say was, "Why don't you come in then? Genie, get the kettle on, love." Molly and Gladys sat down, Molly craning to see out to the garden. "Your Len's busy, isn't he?" she said. "Shall I call him in?" "You stay put," Gladys bossed her. I called down the garden. Len dropped the spade and loped up to the house. Then everyone's eyes fixed on Gloria. "I am speaking to you from the cabinet room at number 10 Downing Street," the Prime Minister said. Words we'd never forget. The announcement of war. When Mr. Chamberlain had finished, they played the national anthem. None of us spoke for a time. "So it's finally happened," Mom said at last. "Len, you'd better go out and finish off. Mr. Taylor's coming later." Len and Molly were staring at each other with big soppy smiles on their faces. Then he turned and went. In the middle of September, Dad came home to tell us they were being transferred for training outside Birmingham. He didn't know where. Before he went, I saw Mom go to him and they held one another. "I can't stand it," she sobbed. "I won't be able to cope." "You've got Genie," Dad said. "I'm sorry, love. I hadn't realised it'd be so soon." I hadn't seen Mom and Dad cuddling before, not ever. Made me cry too. Then Dad came and took me in his arms too, and I saw there were tears in his eyes. "Goodbye, Genie, love. Don't cry now. I expect I'll be back before we know it." Len was watching us all. Dad gave his shoulder a squeeze, and then he was gone. Mom had a letter from Eric, from Maidenhead. She sniffled a bit when she read it, and then fell into gloom, sitting for hours without her shoes on. I left and went to see my best pal, Teresa Spini. The Spinis had a fruit and veg shop with living quarters behind, just along the road from my nan. It was like stepping right into Italy down there, with them all speaking Italian and cooking with garlic. The yard behind their shop they'd turned into an ice cream factory. The door of the house was almost always open, and usually there were kids spilling in and out. When I got there, I could see Mickey, Teresa's dad, at the table. Apart from running the shop, 2 weeks before, he'd joined the auxiliary fire service. I could hear their voices loud in Italian. "Genie!" Teresa called, spotting me. Soon as I got there, they switched to English. Teresa pulled a chair out for me. "'Bout time," she said. "We haven't seen you in ages." "Some of us work for a living, you know." I looked round the table. It's quiet, isn't it? The 4 younger Spinis were missing, gone with the evacuation. I felt the loss almost as if they were my own brothers and sisters. "I wonder how they are and what they are doing." Vera's face was crumpling. "They'll be all right, Mom," Teresa said, putting her hand on her mother's arm. "I don't know why I sent them," Vera went on. "Nothing's happening." "No good thinking like that," Mickey said gently. "The war's only just started and we don't know what's coming. Francesca'll see they're all right. She's nearly grown up now." Vera got up, clearing dishes. "Who wants ice cream?" she called from the scullery. "Yes, please," I said. "I didn't need to ask you, did I?" She smiled, bringing in the basin of homemade ice cream. Vera's mum and dad, the Scatolis, were from the middle of Italy, one of the ice cream families. You came across Scatoli ice cream cycles all over town. When Vera married Mickey, the family helped them set up their own shop. I used to go with Teresa to Little Italy, behind Moore Street Station, to see her granny sometimes. Nonna Amelia Scatoli was a wispy old lady who always wore black and hardly spoke any English. The ice cream was delicious. I was just thinking how nice it was when Teresa had to go and say, "I wish I could get a job." Mickey's eyes swivelled round to her angrily. "We need you here, and first you got to learn how to behave yourself." "I am behaving myself." Teresa was on the boil already. "He was a customer. I was only talking to him. What's wrong with that?" "Talking to him." Mickey sat back. "I can see what he's doing with his eyes. What you're doing with yours too. You make yourself cheap behaving like that. You give him ideas." "Don't keep on, Mickey," Vera interrupted. "You've said enough already." "But she don't take any bloody notice." Mickey roared. How come it's always me? Teresa pointed at Stevie, her older brother, across the table. You don't say anything when he's going about with that lunatic Fausto. Mickey waved the air dismissively. Fausto's a fool. It's not fair, I'm sick of it. The men in this family do just what they like and expect us to stay at home and wait on the hand and foot. She pushed her chair back and marched off outside. It's like a prison here. Teresa and I sat on the back step, frocks over our knees. I really hate Dad sometimes. She squinted up at the sky. Wish they'd come if they're coming. We could do with a bit of action round here. You're awful, I said. Any rate, I didn't think that was the kind of action you were interested in nowadays. Come on, tell us. Who is he? Teresa stuck a finger against her lips. Vera was washing up and Stevie was wiping. She leaned toward me. A whisper tickled my ear. He keeps coming into the shop from that sheet metal place opposite. I'm sure he's taken a fancy to me. She looked back nervously at the house. So, he's Prince Charming then, is he? I couldn't help sounding sarky. He's all right. Bit skinny, though. She laughed. No, I'm being unkind. He's got a nice way with him. I turned away, staring stubbornly across the yard. Oi, what's up with you? She elbowed me. B for boys, B for boring. You wanted to know? Yeah, and you told me? I snapped. And I don't know what you're always moaning about your family for. If I had a family like yours, I'd think I was in clover. You should try living with my lot. Don't get on your high horse. Teresa's temper had a short fuse. You're not the one stuck in the shop and minding little kiddies all the time. Nor are you now, 'cause they're not here, are they? And your dad doesn't come down on you every time you even talk to a boy. Family this, family that. You can't get away from them, ever. She looked round at me. All I want's a bit of excitement. We'll be pals, whatever. Boys don't make any difference. I know, I said. The weeks passed. Poland surrendered. We clung to Gloria's music and wondered what was happening. Mum decided she'd get herself employed and fixed herself up with a job on the telephone exchange, second shift of the day. All of a sudden she was excited, cheeks pink. You'll have to stop in and keep Len company. Who's going to cook and shop and clean? Genie, she laughed. You sound like an old woman. I'll be home mornings, and you know what to do by now, don't you? Kitting herself up with a couple of new frocks and a pair of shoes, she went off to work at dinner time and came home at about 10:30 at night off the bus. She was full of it, the work, the people. I could just imagine her putting on a posh telephone voice. I decided to have a go at something else myself. I was getting restless with all this change around me, and I needed a job which allowed me to finish early, what with the shopping and cooking to do. There was a job going at a firm called Commercial Loose Leaf. The gaffer was a middle-aged man with a worried-looking face. Do you know your numbers properly? He asked. Oh, yes, I said airily. I was good at arithmetic at school. Just so long as you can count. He gave me a quick look up and down. Table hand, you can start Monday. The company produced trade books and ledgers. They put me to numbering pages covered with print about technical things I couldn't make head nor tail of. You had to concentrate so you didn't lose your place, but it didn't take up anything like the whole of your mind. For days I dreamt of nothing but numbers. I was working from 8 in the morning till 4:30. After work, I'd pick up any shopping on the way home. Len came in soon after, so Muggins would cook the meal and wash up, and we'd sit in with Gloria the rest of the evening until Mum came in. Occasionally, Teresa would come down to keep us company. You're the one person who cheers me up, I told her one night. It's an endless round of drudgery otherwise. You'll make someone a lovely wife, she teased. I scowled. I'm not getting married. Not ever. You're better off on your own. Look at my family. Who'd want to get itched after seeing them lot? Genie, you're awful. Teresa sat up. Guess what? My love life is about to begin. No, I said, not the skinny chap. That's the one. We're going for a walk Sunday in Highgate Park. My eyes widened. Does your mum know? Teresa shook her head. I'll tell them I'm coming to yours. But that's lies. It's not as if we're going to do anything. I just want some excitement. I get sick of being under Mum and Dad's noses all the time. Anyway, his name's Jack and he's 17. Well, keep me posted, I said. And Teresa, don't make me lie for you. Teresa was changing. Even though the war had barely affected us in terms of fighting, we'd all changed. Life was peaceful without Mum around. Len'd get a fire going in the grate when I got the tea, and we'd listen to Henry Hall or the 9 o'clock news. Then there'd be music, and I'd do mending or tidying or hand-washing until Mum came in. Then bed. That was our day, every day. One night, while Len and I sat waiting, we heard the front door open and Mum's voice, high and animated in a way I'd never heard before. Good night, then. Thanks ever so much. The door slammed shut. She was in the hall taking her coat off and humming to herself. I went to look. She smiled at me. Everything okay? Who was that at the door? A copper. She kept her tone casual. Seen me home a couple of times in the blackout. He's very helpful. That's nice. I stood watching her. Got the kettle on? Hello, Lenny, love. He nodded amiably at her. I went and lit the gas. When I couldn't stand any more of commercial loose leaf, I got myself another new job in a little factory in Conybeare Street, staying in bunk beds, which they made for the forces and the shelters. On one side, a few fellas were knocking up the beds. Then they came to us to be stained. It wasn't too bad. Whenever it got slack, I went round and swept up. Don't you ever let up, one of the lads said to me. He had black curly hair, grey eyes, and his name was Jimmy. No, I said, I like to be on the go. I can see that. He kept watching me, throwing me the odd wink. He fancies you, the girl working with me said. I can't say I wasn't flattered by his attention. I pulled the belt tight round my overall and kept my hair brushed. Every week we had a letter from Dad. He'd started off being billeted in a barn with rats running round at night. The food was abominable and he seemed to spend most of his life digging. Trenches, latrines, holes. He said he missed us and hoped he'd be back for Christmas. Mum seemed a bit shaken by this news. Eric wrote every so often and told us he was all right and that Mrs. Spencer was a very nice lady and thanked us for the letters we sent him. Can he come home at Christmas, Mum? I asked. I should think so, she said vaguely. I had this feeling when I talked to Mum nowadays that her mind was somewhere else. Couldn't he stay home? Lots of other kids have come back. There's nothing happening, is there? What? Her attention snapped back to me. I don't think so, Genie, not while there's any danger of bombs. In any case, there's no one at home to look after him, is there? One night after work, I stoked a fire under the copper and had a good go at the washing, pounding it with the dolly. By the time Mum got in, there were shirts and underclothes draped all round the room. We heard the front door opening. Come on through, I heard her say. Len and I looked at each other. I saw the shock in her face as she caught sight of her drawers hung out to dry, but she recovered herself quickly. This is Bob, Mum started babbling. He's been very kind and escorted me home from the bus, so I thought a cup of tea was the least we could do. Over her shoulder I could see his face. Brown hair, swarthy, handsome, quite a bit younger than her. Copper's uniform. He was looking nervous. She gave a tinkly laugh. This is my brother Len. Shake hands, Len. Len did as he was told. And this is my daughter, Eugenie. I had her when I was very young. 18, I added, pretending to be helpful. And I'm 15, Mum glowered at me. "Genie," she said between her teeth, "the washing. Couldn't you, I've just done it all out," I said stubbornly. "Never mind." PC Bob gave a stupid little laugh. "I take people as I find 'em. I've got a family of my own, after all." "Bob's got 2 kiddies," Mum said, seeing him to a chair. "Kettle on, Genie." We all drank tea while Len and I sat quiet, and Mum chattered on about her job. She didn't talk about Dad. I watched her. She was like another person. I had a good look at PC Bob. I don't dislike people on site as a general rule, but I couldn't stand him. I could sense what was between them, and I didn't like it. He didn't say much, smiled in the right places when Mum laughed. His eyes travelled over as she talked. I wanted to get up and shout, "Stop staring at her like that!" When he'd drunk up, he put his cup on the floor. "Better be off home," he said, at last. "Oh, yes." Mum was sparkly still. "Back to your family." They went into the hall, snickering like a couple of monkeys. It went quiet for a moment. I wondered what they were doing. Then I heard her letting him out. When she came back, she gave me a wide smile. "He's such a nice man, isn't he?" A week later, when Mum was due home from work, I left Len in the back with Gloria and went to the front room. I left it dark, pulled back the corner of the blackout curtain and slid the window open a crack. Not many minutes later, I heard them. I couldn't make out their shapes in the sooty darkness, but I knew Mum's tone. Their voices were low. I was scared they'd noticed the open window, but the only thing they were interested in was each other. They came and leaned up against the window where I was sitting. Mum perched on the sill. "At least we don't have to worry about the neighbours," she said, giggling. Silence. Kissing. Blood pounded in my ears. "Bob," her voice was wheedling now, "you are going to be able to sort out your shifts, aren't you?" "For this week," he said. "What about your kid? She giving you any trouble?" "No, she hasn't got a clue about anything." Any road. "We said you'd got a family, didn't we?" "Oh, yeah, my 2 kids. He thought that was very amusing. "Come on, Dor." Then they were kissing again. After a bit, Bob pulled away. "I need more than this, Doreen. I can't wait forever, you know." "I wanted to," Mum squeaked. "If only there was a way we could get on our own. You do love me, don't you, Bob?" I didn't want to hear any more of this. I let the curtain drop. I sat with Len waiting for her to come in, thinking of my poor old dad in a barn full of rats. "Cow," I thought to myself. "You horrible, selfish cow." I felt like killing her. Winter set in, and work was all life consisted of now. All day painting wood stain on the rough bunks, with Jimmy the joiner winking away at me across the factory floor as he bashed the frames together. I started smiling back. What the hell? Then there were the evenings of enthralling drudgery, and Mum fluttering in late, her brains gone AWOL for the duration. As Christmas drew nearer, I thought, at least Dad'll be home. Maybe him being there might bring her to her senses. I had to have something to cling to. When Eric came home for Christmas, the house was filled with Christmas carols, thanks to Gloria. "You look bigger," I told him. "I get lots to eat. Mrs. Spencer's got chickens and a vegetable patch, and I got a nice comfy bed, and you don't have to go down the garden to spend a penny." "Sounds a bit of all right, then." Eric was talking a bit different, putting his H's on. "You glad to be back?" Eric shrugged. "S'pose so." He'd gone all shy. "Come here." I gave him a cuddle. He also wasn't just skin and bone anymore. The night before Dad was due home, Mom managed to wangle herself time off work. "I'm having an evening out," she said, touching up her hair. "You'll be okay, won't you, Genie? You've got Eric for company now." I sat watching her. "This is one of the things you don't want me to tell Dad about then, is it?" She gave me a nasty look. "Now, Genie, there's no need to be like that. It's just better if you don't say anything about Bob. Your father'll only get the wrong idea." "Will he?" She stared at me. "Bob's just a pal. Someone to have a chat to." Come 7 o'clock, Bob arrived in a suit, a hanky dangling from his breast pocket. Smoothie bastard, I thought. "Do you tell your wife you're on a late shift then?" I asked him. "Genie," Mom snarled, "say you're sorry." I walked off into the kitchen. "Come on," Bob said. "Let's get out of here." When they'd gone, Eric said, "Who's he then?" "Someone Mom knows. Let's just forget about them, shall we?" We ate our meal, then had Gloria on. I played games with Eric. Come 9, I put him to bed and waited until Len went up too. I wanted to have a good wash and brush up for the next day with Dad coming home. I heated water on the stove and filled a basin. The house was quiet. I wanted to wash my hair. I thought of Mom's rainwater bucket outside. Why shouldn't I have nice hair as well? I opened the back door, couldn't see the bucket, so I stepped outside. The bucket was down by the privy, but when I found it, the water inside was frozen solid. Just my luck. I'd have to use the water I'd already got. Then I heard the noise, a giggle, coming out of the Anderson. I crept down and stood outside. There wasn't much to hear. Long bits of silence, whispering, then a burst of giggling. Mom's giggling. I'd heard enough. Shaking with anger, I went back to the house. "Bugger the both of you," I cursed to myself, tipping water over my hair. At that moment, I hated the whole world. "Long film, was it?" I asked Mom next morning. She'd stayed in bed late and came down yawning. She gave me a startled look. "We went dancing. It was really lovely." When I said nothing and just kept looking at her, she said between her teeth, "If you dare breathe a word." When Dad got home, she was all over him. Poor Dad was as pleased as Punch. Thought she'd decided she loved him after all. When he saw our Dad, Eric showed the first positive emotion we'd seen since he got back. Dad squatted down and Eric flung himself into his arms, face against the scratchy uniform. "That's a lad," Dad said. He held Eric away and looked at him. "You've grown 6 inches since I last saw you." "Mrs. Spencer seems to be looking after him a treat," Mom said smoothly. Dad looked over Eric's shoulder. "Genie, you're growing up too." Shy, suddenly, I went to be taken in his arms. Relief seeped through me. Even my anger with Mom stopped bubbling. Everyone was back. We could now at least pretend that we were a proper family again. "Here, I've got something for you." Dad pulled a folded paper from a pocket. "Not much, but I thought they'd suit you." Inside were 3 ribbons, red, white and blue. "Patriotic too?" Mom gushed. "What you say, Genie?" "Thanks, Dad, they're smashing." I was chuffed, not just with the gift, but because he'd thought of me. "We're having Christmas here," Mom said. "Nan and Lil and the kids can come over. We'll make a real celebration of it." Dad put his arm round her. "That's my wench. It's good to be back where I belong." The Speeney household was alight with celebration. The kids were home. "And they're not going back," Vera vowed. Her face looked softer, the tension gone from it. "Whatever happens, at least we'll all be together." Happy now, Mickey sat at the table, all his kids around him. He gave Giovanna's cheek a playful pinch. "Who's my beautiful girl, eh?" She went pink. "Get off, Dad." It was Christmas Eve, and I'd brought a few sweets for the kids. The younger ones were making streamers, up to their ears in strips of paper and paste. They fell on the sweets. "Cool, thanks, Genie." Stevie was hooking bits of holly over the mantel. "Put it everywhere." Mickey waved his hands. Vera gave us all a cup of Tizer. "Must be lovely having Eric and your dad home," Teresa said. "Proper family again." "'Tis," I said. I hadn't told her about Mom and Bob, of course. Amid the chaos, I whispered, "How's Jack?" Teresa's face clouded over. "OK, I think." "Haven't you seen him?" "He's busy." "Take a hint. He's had enough of you." "That's just like you, ain't it?" she snarled. "I knew you were jealous." "I'm not. I just don't want to see you get your feelings hurt." "Oi, you two aren't falling out, are you?" Vera scolded. "You staying to have a bite with us, Genie? There'll be enough." "Can't, Mrs. Speeney, thanks very much. Got too much to do at home." All the family kissed me and wished me a happy Christmas. "These are for the family." Vera sent me off with a bag of fruit and a warm happiness fizzing inside me. Mom did us proud over Christmas. She put on such a good show that even I was lulled into forgetting what a deceiver she was. She adorned the house with a tree in the front room, mistletoe in the doorway, and tinsel all along the mantel. Dad put his arm around her waist. "Love you, Dor. You know that, don't you?" "Oh, Victor," she said. She turned and kissed him. We had turkey and trimmings. Mom took over the main cooking for once and did her best to get it all right. She was like another person, bright and chirpy and singing carols along with Gloria, pink-cheeked and happy-looking. Nanny Rawson and Lil had brought the kids over. Eric seemed happy to see his cousins. "You're looking very pleased with yourself," Lil said to Mom. Mom even invited Gladys and Molly over after dinner to listen to the concert on the wireless. "This is ever so kind of you," they kept saying. Molly made a beeline for Len and plonked herself down next to him at the table, smiling like mad. We listened to the concert, opened our few presents and drank ruby port. Mom had talt from Dad and there were chocolates. Gladys fell asleep in the armchair with her legs apart. Then Molly shifted her chair even closer to Len's, giggling. Mom pretended not to notice. It had been a happy week, the happiest I could remember in a long time. I kept trying to forget it was a lie. Early in the new year, Dad had to go, and so did Eric. "Do you want to go back to Mrs. Spencer?" I asked him. Mom was watching us. "He's got to go, there's no two ways about it." She squatted down next to Eric and looked into his face. "You do understand, don't you, love? It's for your own safety." 10 whole days of Bob deprivation had left her nerves frayed. The sugary act she'd managed for Dad was beginning to wear off too, and she was being short with him again. Dad knew he was bound for France, and he was a bit emotional. The morning he went, he set off very early so he could take Eric on the way. So the two of them got togged up, Dad in his uniform, his kit bag over one shoulder, and Eric as before with his little case and gas mask. Dad came and gave me a big hug. "Ta-ra, Genie," he said. "Be a good girl now." "Bye, Dad." Eric clung to me. "Be good, won't you? I expect you'll be home again in no time." Len gave Eric a bear hug, and Mom, Len and I stood out on the front as the two of them walked off down the street into the pale dawn. That very evening, Bob was round again. Must have been psychic. Meanwhile, I had my own admirer in Jimmy the Joiner. I'd been paying him a bit more attention. I felt nothing in the way of actual attraction towards him, but it gave me a warm, stroked sensation that anyone was taking an interest. I started to get a thrill saying, "Hello, Jimmy," when I came into work, seeing that I had the power to make a red flush spread all over his face. End of Side 1. Side 2. "Rationing starts today," Mom said. "We'll have to make sure we don't have Molly over every 5 minutes living off our ration. She seems to be coming here a lot." She didn't know the half of it. Molly was over just about every evening when Mom was at the telephone exchange. Once Len was home from work, he and Molly parked themselves in front of Gloria for the evening, serene smiles on their faces, whatever was on. Gloria's music was the one thing that could lift my spirits on these chill, dreary days. Geraldo, Joe Loss, Ray Noble, Glenn Miller. I was in love with them all. For me, for Len and Molly, and for countless other people, they made life worth living. It started snowing, heaps and banks of it clogging up the town. Gloria said it was the worst winter for 45 years. "Feels safer somehow, doesn't it?" Mom said. "As if they couldn't get at us with all this wrapped round." She stood staring out of the back window. "It's so cold, though." I was crouched by the fire. I was frozen in bed last night. "Where's that crocheted blanket of Nan's gone?" Mom picked up a bag and started fiddling inside it. "What blanket?" "The yellow one that's usually on the chair back." Mom shrugged. "Maybe Len's got it." But there was no sign of it on his bed. One night, Len and Molly started kissing. I was ever so embarrassed. They didn't care whether I was there or not. Didn't even notice. I went into the kitchen and did the washing up. Mom would have had a fit if she'd known about them. But then, who was she to complain? When I crept back in later, Molly was sitting on Len's lap. She beamed at me. "All right, Genie," she said. "Don't mind us, will you?" The mantel clock said 10:25. "Mom'll be in soon," I said. But she wasn't. By 11:45, I had this nasty suspicion turning round in my mind. The next morning brought a blue sky, the sun brilliant on the snow. Before Mom was up, I opened the back door and went out. From the kitchen to the privy, the snow had been well stamped down by us tramping back and forth. No one should have walked towards the Anderson, but I found footprints leading to it from the side gate. 2 sets. I followed them, pulled the door open and looked inside. A piece of canvas had been laid out to cover the floor. On top of it were a tilly lamp, a couple of pillows, and the yellow crocheted blanket of Nan's, which had been missing from the back room. One freezing Saturday, there was a knock at the front door. Mom and Len were away at Nan's, so I ran through and there was Jimmy the joiner giving me a shy smile. I wasn't sorry to see him. "Thought I'd come and see you," he said. "Come through," I said. "I'll make us a cuppa." Jimmy sat quiet, hardly taking his eyes off me. I kept looking at him out of the corner of my eye, not sure whether I liked him or not. There was something awkward about him, his pale skin, the dark hair curling at his neck. On the other hand, he had come specially to see me. We sat and drank tea. When he was going, he said, "I've got something to ask you." He shuffled his feet. "Do you fancy coming out with me, Genie, to the pictures or summit?" "I would, Jimmy," I said. So next week, Jimmy and I walked down the Cannon Hill Park. I wore my best green winter frock and huddled in my coat. As soon as we were on our own, he grabbed my hand and smiled at me. "Don't mind, do you? I've been wanting to hold your hand since I first saw you. You're ever so pretty, Genie." "Me?" I laughed. "Go on, I'm not." When he got me up by the trees at the top end of the park, he caught hold of me and kissed me, and his big slimy tongue popped into my mouth. I couldn't do anything except struggle for breath. In the end, I had to pull away and take in a gasp, which Jimmy took to mean I was overcome with emotion. He grinned with triumph. You're my girl now, Genie. The following week, Len and I went to Nan's straight from work. That night we had stew with dumplings, all squeezed round the table. It was cosy with the fire and the dim gaslight, and we all ate hungrily. "Feels a bit like Christmas, doesn't it?" Nan said. Afterwards, Len and I walked home together through the dark, empty streets. One hint of sound once we were outside our house brought Molly over. "Doesn't Gladys mind?" I asked. I was struggling to find my key in the dark. Molly put a finger to her lips rather coyly. "She's asleep. Didn't see me go." As I went to the front door, I heard a faint knocking noise from the side of the house. The entry gate was unfastened. Anger twisted in me. "You go in," I said to Len and Molly, unlocking the door. "I'm just going to shut the side gate." I tiptoed down the alley into the back garden and across the wet grass. I knew it. Noises from the Anderson. Even more blatant than before. It was horrible. Something exploded inside me. I pelted back round and in through the front door, steaming in past Len and Molly, who were in each other's arms. I set an enamel pail in the sink with the tap full on. When it was full, I flung open the back door and stomped down the garden, leaning to one side to balance the pail. From inside the Anderson, I could still hear loud, indecent sounds. I could barely see a thing, but I couldn't possibly miss. Yanking the door open, I sloshed the bucket in on top of them. "Bob's your sodding uncle!" I yelled, and left them in a wet, shrieking heap inside. Mum's rage knew no bounds. She called me every name under the sun once PC Bob had dripped off down the road. "You stupid, selfish cow!" She swept, shivering, into the back room, lank strips of hair hanging on her shoulders. "I'm frozen, and Bob could catch his death." She hadn't even noticed Molly sprawled on top of Len in one of the chairs. Molly struggled to her feet and skedaddled. "Who in the hell do you think you are? Interfering!" Mum ranted on. "What's Bob going to think? He might never come back." "Good," I shouted. "He shouldn't be here at all. You shouldn't be carrying on behind Dad's back. You're a disgusting tart, that's what you are." She burst into tears. "You don't understand, Genie. You don't know what it's like to find someone you can really love, to be lifted out of years of feeling dead. You've seen how he looks at me. I've never in my life been wanted like that before. Ever." She was sobbing. "Dad wants you." She looked down, and I knew she was ashamed. "But I don't want him. God knows I've tried. He makes me feel buried up to the neck. Always has." I started crying then. And for once, Mum forgot herself and put her arms round me. And I sobbed and bawled and I couldn't stop. Len came and hugged the both of us together like a gorilla. "I'm sorry, Genie," Mum said in the middle of it. "I just can't help myself." Bob stayed away for a week after that, and all was rosy. Mum was being extra specially nice to me. She ran me up a new dress on her machine and it actually fitted. It was navy with white polka dots and a little matching scarf. She did some cleaning. One morning she even brought me up a tea in bed, an unheard of luxury. "I know I've been a bit neglectful, Genie," she said. She sat on the edge of my bed, her hair loose. "So, who's the lad courting you?" "His name's Jimmy Davis. He's at the factory." "Nice, is he?" "He's all right." She put her head on one side. "You're not getting up to anything?" "No." "Mum, is Bob ever coming back?" "Genie, I've told you. I love Bob. He loves me." "But what about Dad? What are you going to do?" She went over to the window. "I don't know. I was crying quietly behind her. She turned to me. "Don't think I don't feel badly about your father. He's a good man. He don't deserve it, I know. But I can't throw away what I've found." I pushed my face into the blanket. "I want my dad home. I want things to be all right again." She sat by me, stroked my back. "I'm sorry, Genie, but Bob's the man I love." After a short bout of quarantine, Bob was back, and I was faced with an offensive of charm. "Hello, Genie," he said one Saturday morning, producing a bunch of daffs. "These are for you, to make friends. Give them to Mom. Flowers make me sneeze." I flung the yellow blooms on the table. Mom looked ever so nervous when she came down. She had her hair up and was wearing a pretty dress which hugged her waist and her bosoms. Bob's eyes swept up and down, devouring her. Dirty sod. "We'll all have to go out together one day, won't we, Bob?" Mom said brightly. "To the pictures or something. Get to know each other better. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Genie?" I didn't even bother answering. I was hanging on to what I had with Jimmy, which wasn't much, but I needed someone. A typical date with Jimmy went like this. Jimmy and I would meet on a Saturday. He'd take my hand and sometimes we'd go to a matinee at the Carlton, or if it was fine, we'd walk in the park. After he thought we'd indulged in enough pleasantries, Jimmy'd set to with the real business of the date as far as he was concerned. He'd give me a sheepish grin, and those lips would come close again. Blimey, the hours I spent locked, more than half bored in Jimmy's grasp. Maybe I'm not normal, I thought. Perhaps all that was going on at home had made me old too soon. But what I really wanted to know was it normal when a man kissed you to find yourself thinking up a shopping list in your head? Our house was nothing short of a knocking shop, and it was getting me right down. First shift was Len and Molly. Having those two snogging in front of me half the evening was a disturbing enough sight. Didn't know where to put myself. Second shift, on nights they could manage it, were the other two lovebirds. Now they'd moved into the house, the Anderson shelter not being the ideal place to carry on a romance. Len and I put Gloria on as loud as we dared to drown out even the slightest sign that they were there. I did a lot of that in those days, blocking things out. Some nights, when I thought Bob was coming, I stayed over at Nan's and slept on the sofa. It didn't take Nan long to catch on. "I'm not a fool, you know, Genie. What's going on with Doreen?" I couldn't meet her eyes. "Nothing, Nan? Is she carrying on behind your dad's back?" I couldn't lie, not to Nan. "She's got a friend." "Thought so. She's been like a bitch on heat since Christmas. Selfish little cow. She says she's never been happy with Dad." "Happy? A marriage is a marriage, and that's that. Dwelling on whether you're happy or not is a sure way into trouble." I looked at her tough, lined face. "Don't say anything to her, will you?" I begged. "Not at the moment. Things are all right, really." "Are they?" Nan's voice was sarky as it ever got. "So why are you sleeping here on my couch?" I saw Teresa now and then. I wasn't sure about what she was up to with Skinny Jack, and at the moment I didn't really care. One night, though, she came round looking a bit down. "Fancy coming to ours for a bit?" At the Speeneys I found Teresa's dad in a bad state. He was in a chair by the hearth, his face pale, his skin clammy, and he seemed only to be able to talk in a whisper. Opposite him sat a young man talking on and on in Italian. Mickey kept trying to interrupt, but when he tried to speak, it ended in a bout of coughing. Vera looked exhausted. "Mickey was called to a factory fire yesterday," she whispered to me. "Some chemical place. He said the fumes were evil, choked him. It's done something terrible to his chest." Her eyes filled with tears. I hate seeing him like this. She touched his hand. Mickey, please go to bed. Later, he said, trying to smile at her. Fausto, Vera implored the man. The rest was in Italian, but I could see she was begging him to go, to let Mickey rest. He flapped his hand impatiently, saying, Subito, subito, straight away, and not moving. Stevie sat at the table, his eyes intent on Fausto's face. Brew up, Teresa, Vera ordered quietly. I could see how tense she was. What's going on? I asked, following her into the scullery. That stupid idiot. She jerked her head. Fausto's family comes from the same place as Dad's in Italy. They're talking about what's happening there, Mussolini. Fausto reckons he's a black shirt. He doesn't even really know what it means, but Stevie looks up to him. Fausto hasn't got a father, so Dad feels responsible for him. He's worried he's going to get into trouble. Trouble? Teresa shrugged. Are you worried about your dad? Yes, but the doctor said he should be all right. Needs time to let his lungs clear again. I went out and sat with Vera, watching Fausto talking on as if something was burning him up inside. Spring arrived, with all its usual fevers enhanced. Worse luck for me. How about a trip to the Lickies? Jimmy said. I couldn't think of anything better. It was gorgeous. The skies powder blue, the sun warm. The Licky Hills are a beautiful wooded ridge on the south edge of Birmingham, where the trams and buses terminated. The place where hordes of factory-pale, work-weary brummies congregate on holidays and weekends to escape the claustrophobic closeness of the city. Jimmy started trying to kiss me on the bus. Get off, I said irritably. Not in front of all these people. Jimmy leered at me. No one's looking. I don't care. You should behave yourself when there's people about. What, so I don't have to when we're on our own? Don't you ever think about anything else? It was warm enough for my summer frock, and Jimmy only had on trousers and a grey shirt. We had a bag with bread and butter and cake. I was excited. A trip to the Lickies was a really special day out. At Rednall, the bus disgorged us all. I'd have liked to go to the park with its ornamental pool and flowers, but Jimmy had other plans. Grabbing my hand, he dragged me off through the woods. Truth to tell, I was wishing I could have come on my own. I could feel coming over me the bored restlessness I felt more and more with Jimmy. This is a nice spot. I pointed to a place on the grass with rings of families in view. Let's have our picnic here, eh? Nah. Jimmy pulled me further into the woods. Don't want to be surrounded by people, do we? He finally settled in a place in the woods which had no scenic view at all. I knew what he wanted. Now I've got you all to myself, haven't I? He chuckled. Come here. I saw those lips coming towards me again. Will you let me eat me dinner in peace? I snapped. Can't you think about something else for a change? Or don't you have anything else in your head at all? What I've got's all here, he said, patting his crotch. So I've sodding well gathered. I shifted away and opened the packet of sandwiches. He let me eat for a bit, munching on an apple. Then he hurled the apple core away into the trees. Come on, let's do it. What? The old thing. Fucking properly. Jimmy, don't use words like that. He was shuffling closer. Sorry. Now give us a kiss. I gave a big sigh. What price affection. He kissed me for some time, then undid a couple of the buttons on the front of my dress and wriggled his fingers inside. Don't, I tried to say, but he wasn't having it. I was mortified. His eyes had started rolling about and he started fumbling about in his clothes. Here, he said, have a feel of this. This is how much I want you. He yanked at my hand, rubbed it against him. No, I said, pulling away. Don't be dirty. He scowled. All right, then. If you're going to be like that, we'll do it another way. Hands on my shoulders, he shoved me back, pulled my dress up and got his hand down my knickers, poking around clumsily. Lying along me, he ground his body up and down faster and faster. It didn't take long. He tensed up, eyes squeezed shut, hurting me with his hand, and I called out in pain. When he got off, my blue dress was all wet and sticky. "You pig," I said. "You horrible, disgusting pig." "Go on." He turned away, buttoning himself up again. "That's what you wanted. Next time, I'll give it to you proper." I felt very cold suddenly and sat huddled up, clutching my knees tight. The world was a nasty, mean place. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to be seeing Jimmy again. I gave my notice at the bunk bed factory and said my goodbyes to Jimmy, who was disappointed but not heartbroken. One evening, feeling at a loose end, I went round to see Nan. Lil sat on the couch chewing her nails as if she'd like to gnash someone's head off. The price of fags had gone up, the government was pushing the factories to up production, and the house was full to bursting with kids yelling and carrying on. "Your life's never your own," she moaned. "At work you don't have time to turn round hardly, and when I get home I can't see across the room for mad bloody kids." Nan and I exchanged glances. "I can't stand any more of this," Lil snapped. "Come on, Genie, I'll take you home." "It's hardly even dark," I protested. "I can sit with you for a while, have a bit of peace out of this madhouse." Lil was already walking out. The house was dark. There were no lights on inside when I opened the front door. Then I remembered. Len and Molly had gone to the pictures and wouldn't be back until 10. "Come on in," I said. "I'll put the kettle on." I was trying to poke some life into the fire when we heard it from upstairs. Clear and loud and horribly unmistakable. "Jesus," Lil said. "What the—" Mother's cries reached fever pitch. "Genie," Lil hissed. "Who is that up there?" "Mom, I can hear that much. But who the hell's with her?" "Bob." "Who's Bob?" "A copper." Lil mouthed air like a fish. "How long's this been going on?" I shrugged. "The little bitch." Lil advanced on the door to the stairs. "Lil, don't!" But it was like shouting into an avalanche. As she stomped upstairs, I sat down, waiting for all hell to break loose. The fight Mom and Lil had that night outdid anything I could remember. In the midst of the shouting and cursing, Bob slunk downstairs half-dressed. As he pulled on the other bits, his shoes came flying down after him. "Take these with you, you filthy bastard!" Lil shouted. "And don't ever come back!" Bob didn't even look at me. He let himself out and left them to it. It was soon after that Mom started being sick. "My cooking's not that bad, is it?" I said to her. All I got in reply was a lot of groaning. Some mornings she'd say, "I can't go to work. I feel terrible." And she'd crawl back up to bed and stay there until the middle of the afternoon. She did a lot of crying as well. I started to get worried. She looked terrible too. Face white and clammy, hair in greasy strips. One morning, between bouts of sickness, she finally admitted she was going to have a baby. "I can't keep it to myself anymore, Genie. You're me daughter and I've got to tell someone." She lay back sobbing into the pillow. "Is it Bob's?" "Of course it's Bob's," she wailed. "How many men do you think I've been with?" I felt sorry for her. "Are you going to tell him?" Mom looked bleakly across at the window. "I want to tell him. I want everything to be all right. For him to want it. But after what happened..." Since the big fight, Bob had not been near the place. I'm scared he won't want to see me now. Do you want me to find him for you? She wiped her eyes. Look, he works at Moseley Police Station. Could you take a note? While all this was going on, the war in Europe had moved on apace. Hitler had invaded the Netherlands. Bombs had fallen somewhere outside Canterbury, and Mr. Churchill became Prime Minister. Everyone started dusting off their gas masks again. The war was getting nearer. The Dutch capitulated and the Germans moved into Belgium. Antwerp, Liège, Brussels, names falling like ninepins. When Bob turned up, I let him in, still in his uniform. He pushed past into the hall. Len was still at work. Luckily, Mom was up and dressed and had dragged a comb through her hair. "Bob," she said. She struggled weakly to stand, smiling sweetly at him. "What do you want?" "I didn't get a chance to say sorry about what happened. My sister..." She gave a little laugh. "Can't ever get away from your family, can you? One way or another." Bob didn't look amused. "Is that it? I haven't got a lot of time." "Bob, please." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Look, I've something to tell you. Genie, leave us, will you? There's a good girl." I went upstairs. It didn't take her long to tell him. Didn't take him long to get to the front door either. Within minutes, I heard it slam, and Mom's howls of despair. "Nan, there's something you're going to have to know." Mom told me to tell her because she couldn't face doing it herself. Nan was sorting through sugar coupons in the shop. She looked round at me. "Mom's expecting. The baby's Bob's." Nan bent her head, pushed the coupons into her cash box. "Did you hear me?" She bent to push the cash box under the counter. "I may be a lot of things, Genie, but I'm not deaf." "I just thought you'd say something." Nan stood up. She looked tired. "What do you want me to say? That she's a fool? Your father's been a good husband. He's never laid a finger on her, and he's seen you all right. What more does she want?" She passed a hand over her forehead. "I don't know." She let herself through into the house at the back. I followed her. "Mum's bound to ask what you said." "Tell her she knows where her family are. We ain't going nowhere." Mum was managing to pull herself together by dinner time these days, have a bit to eat and get to work. She became almost cheerful. I was baffled. "I've never given Victor credit for what he's given us," she said one evening. "It's time I acted like a proper wife to him." I was so relieved that I didn't think to ask what she imagined Dad was going to say when he came home to find this little cuckoo in the nest. Meantime, I got myself a new job. Lewis Broadbent's Foundry was an old family firm in Highgate. In peacetime, they made brass taps and zinc bases, but for the war effort, the firm had gone over to making caps for shells, petrol cans and other small parts. I was taken on in the warehouse at the back as a checker. It was a wide area with rows of women working at long tables. A middle-aged woman called Doris showed me how to look over the parts, searching for mistakes. After checking, we had to wrap the parts and pack them in tea chests. It kept me busy enough. I was the babby of the place. The other women were Mom's age and older. In between chat about the job, I learned about the Broadbent family who owned the factory. Everyone agreed that Lewis Broadbent was second only to God, and his son, who was in the RAF, had the sun shining out of various bits of his anatomy. "Joe's set to take over the factory when this lot's over," one of the women said. "He's got no airs and graces, though, has he? Comes in and knuckles down to any job he's given. Knows how the place works backwards. Just hope they look after him in the Air Force." Those last days of May, Gloria was on for every news bulletin, whenever anyone was in. The Germans had reached the Channel coast. The British Expeditionary Force was surrounded at Dunkirk, completely cut off. Those of us who had people there could think of nothing else. What was happening to my father? Were they safe? One evening, Auntie Lil turned up. Mom was writing to Eric. "I thought you hated me," Mom said, surprised to see her. "What's done can't be undone," Lil said. "Here, I bought you a bottle of stout for later. Book you up." I brewed up tea. "How is Eric?" Lil asked, seeing the letters on the table. "He's all right. Doesn't write much. That Mrs. Spencer's got her claws into him. It's not right. I feel as if I've lost him." "Never mind," Lil soothed. "You know he's safe and at least he's happy where he is." "But he shouldn't be happy. He doesn't belong there." I took them their cups. As I retreated into the kitchen, I heard Lil say, "What are you going to do, sis?" Mom was crying. "I've been such a fool. I loved him, but he never loved me. It was all a lie." "He was using you, sis." "I want to get back what we had, me and Victor. It wasn't all I've ever wanted, but it was good enough. If I lose that, I'll have nothing." "Doreen, the baby's not just going to go away." I held still in the kitchen, listening. "Victor might be away ages. I could hand the baby over for adoption when it's born, and he'd never know. Nothing would have changed then, would it?" "Doreen!" Lil was shocked. "You can't go on deceiving him. He's your husband." "But what else can I do?" "The truth'll find you out, Dor. The neighbours aren't blind, are they? Some busybody's bound to say summat. You're going to have to tell him the truth." That weekend, they began the evacuation of Dunkirk, bringing troops out by the thousand every day. Listening to the news on Gloria, we were swept along with the fleets of little vessels that had gone to bring the boys home. All I wanted to know was, are they bringing my dad? By the 4th of June, the evacuation was over. The Germans were getting too close. No more ships were going. They started trickling home, coming in from the coast. We heard of arrivals in Birmingham. We waited and waited. Mom was like someone preparing to be fired from a cannon. It was a terrible week. There was no sign of Dad. The women at Broadbent's tutted round me. I knew what they were thinking. If he's not home by now, he must be dead, surely. At home, Mom was falling to pieces. "It's not knowing whether he's alive or dead," she sobbed one evening. "I just want to get it over with." I still clung to my hope that he was alive, maybe in hospital. Mom couldn't get through the days now without drinking. She still managed to get to work, but as soon as she was home, she'd go straight to it. "That's better," she'd say, and plonk herself down until it was time for bed. In June, Italy declared war on Hitler's side. Suddenly, no one was supposed to like Italians anymore. The papers were screaming, "Intern the lot!" I went to see the Spinis that evening. The house was full of people, all talking loudly in Italian. Bottles of wine and tumblers stood on the table. "You all right, Genie?" Teresa asked. I nodded. She put her mouth close to my ear. "They're worried. They think people will be arrested." "But there's no one here who'd do any harm, surely." She shrugged. "Even today at work, someone made a nasty remark about my name." Suddenly, Fausto Pirelli leaned over the table, raising his glass, his eyes blazing. "Viva l'Italia! Viva il Duce!" Mickey pushed his chair back and stood up. "Get out of my house now. Do you want to get us all arrested?" Fausto was led out by two of the men. As they stumbled past the window, we could see his mouth was still going. A few days later, the police moved into Birmingham's Little Italy arresting a man from every house and carting them off to the police station. Among them was Vera's elder brother, Matt Scatoli. They thought it was a bit of a joke at first, Teresa told me when I stopped by the following evening. Have they let them go? I asked. No, no one knows what's happening. Have some dinner with us, Genie, Vera said. There's enough. The Speeneys were all squeezed round the table as usual, except for Stevie, who was out with the ice cream cart. The door to the yard was open and it was quiet. Mickey Speeney sat at the table in his shirt sleeves, staring ahead as if he had things on his mind. He smiled at me, though, when I came in. Vera had cooked beef, and there were potatoes and peas. It was nice to be in a proper family again. No news of your father, Genie, Vera said. Mom doesn't think he's coming back. Teresa reached across and squeezed my hand. Suddenly, there was a shadow across the doorway. 2 shadows. Men in dark suits with bowler hats. One red-faced and fat, the other tall and gangly. Mickey stood up. Can I help you? Without being invited, they stepped in. Are you Michele Spinney? The fat one said. Mickey nodded. I'm instructed to arrest you as an enemy alien. Vera put her hand over her mouth. But I've been here 18 years, Mickey protested. The agitation started him coughing. The thin man stood very straight. We're given leave to take into custody anyone believed likely to endanger the safety of the realm. You can't do this, Vera cried. You're making a mistake. You've been consorting with known members of the Italian Fascio, the thin man continued. We have Mr. Fausto Pirelli in custody already. Teresa suddenly erupted from behind the table. What the hell do you think you're doing? She bawled at him. Coming here scaring our family. Who the hell do you think you are? Mickey laid a hand on her arm. Teresa, be quiet. The exertion made him cough again. Do you know why he's coughing like that? He was in a fire, trying to save a factory, and his chest will never be the same again. He'd die for this country, my dad. And yes, we do know Fausto Pirelli. He's an ignorant little shite, and anything he thinks or does is nothing to do with us. So why don't you just get out of our house and leave us alone? The fat man jerked his head at the other policeman. Let's get out of here. Mr. Speeney? They caught him by the arms. You're coming with us. No! Teresa roared. You can't do this! Mickey's face was grey. Teresa cara, it's a mistake. I'll go with them and get it cleared up. What? Like all their other mistakes? Teresa retorted. I heard the tears in her voice, but she wasn't going to let herself go in front of them. They started to take Mickey away. He turned his head at the door. Don't worry, Vera. It'll be okay. Churchill said this was going to be our finest hour, but it didn't feel like that to me. It felt like the worst time of my entire life. Mom was only just holding together, and I was strung between her and the Speeneys. Stevie had returned home to find his father gone and went straight down to the cop shop, only to be banged up as well. They'd be able to see them in a day or two, Vera was told. A week passed. Vera and Teresa were at the police station every day. Eventually, they were allowed one visit. Vera said none of them had a clue what was happening. No one would tell them anything. Then she found out they'd been moved, and they wouldn't say where. Vera's eyes were sunken with lack of sleep. A few days later, after work, I went to check on the Speeneys again. I found Teresa packing up the shop for the day. Together, we gathered up the empty crates on which they'd arranged the fruit and veg and carried them inside. When we'd finished, I looked into her stricken face. She was holding on tight, I could tell. After a moment, she shrugged despairingly. Oh, Teresa, come here. We stood in each other's arms and Teresa held me very tight. We still don't know where they are, she said. Still haven't heard from them. After a moment she pulled away and bent to bolt the doors of the shop. "Genie?" She stood up, hesitating. "We're all going to Mass. Would you come?" In all the time I'd known Teresa, I'd never once been to Mass with her, so it felt peculiar to be walking to Mass with the Speeneys. Vera's face was drawn, and none of us said much on the way. St. Michael's was in Bartholomew Street. Inside, it seemed very dark after the bright afternoon. I liked the strange smell of wax and incense. A row in front of us sat the little stooping figure of Nonna Amelia, Vera's mum, and beside her, two of Vera's brothers, Marco and Paolo. A bell rang and the priest suddenly started speaking, In nomine Patris. At the end of the Mass, the family gathered outside. Nonna Amelia shuffled out, supported by her two sons. All of us went ceremonially to kiss her cheeks, and she nodded at me kindly and mumbled a greeting. Marco put his arm tightly round Vera for a moment, and she leaned gratefully against him. Her two sisters embraced her as well, their eyes full of concern. There were similar groups along the pavement. I stood by Teresa as people milled back and forth, talking in Italian. I didn't need to ask what they were talking about. A young man came up to Teresa and put his arm round her shoulder. He looked older than us and had black curling hair. Teresa seemed to know him well. She looked up. "Carlo, this is my friend Genie." He smiled, held out his hand. Two blazing blue eyes looked into mine. "Nice to meet you, Genie." He frowned at Teresa. "I've heard of Genie, haven't I?" Teresa shrugged. "We've been pals for years. Her nan lives up the road from us." Carlo looked at her, concerned. "You all right, Teresa?" She nodded. He squeezed her shoulder. People were starting to drift homewards. There were cooking smells coming from houses nearby. "Ciao, Carlo," Teresa said, pulling away. "Ciao." He watched her go. It was as clear as day. Any idiot could have seen what he really felt for her, except obviously Teresa herself. "I don't remember you talking about him before," I said as we began the walk back. "Carlo? I've known him years. I must have mentioned him. He works in the terrazzo trade with his dad, laying floors and that." "He's absolutely gorgeous." "I suppose he is." Teresa sounded offhand, her mind elsewhere. The days passed, bringing no news for any of us. Not of my father, nor Mickey Speeney. Early one morning, there was a great banging on the front door. I sped into the hall. Gladys was talking before I'd got the door properly open. "You better get ready for a shock." She was holding Molly tightly by the arm. "Come in," I said, and they steamed past me. "Sit down, I'll get Mom." When we got down, Gladys propelled herself out of her chair and pointed at Molly, who was sitting hanging her head. "This one here's in the family way, and your Len got her that way. What have you got to say about that, then?" She folded her arms over her mountainous bosoms. "That can't be right," Mom got out eventually. "Molly, that's not true, is it?" "She's sick every morning. Isn't that right, Moll?" Gladys leaned over her, shouting. Molly lifted her head and you could see from her face she wasn't feeling well. Mom was looking at me. "Genie, what's been going on?" "What do you think's been going on?" Gladys barked. "My Molly's got a bun in the oven, that's what, and it didn't get there by itself." Just then, Len appeared, shirt hanging out, only half awake. "Ah," Gladys said. "Here he is." Len stared round at us. "He's got to know," Gladys said. "So you better get on with it." "Len?" Mom took his arm. "You and Molly like each other a lot, don't you?" Len nodded. "Well, Molly's having your babby, Lenny." Len looked puzzled. "Molly's got a babby in her tummy," Mom spelt out slowly. And it was you that put it there. See? Len moved closer to Molly. You got a babby, Molly? Molly nodded, looking scared. Well, Mom said, I suppose the next thing is to fix a wedding day. The factory was abuzz with excitement. Doris was organising a lunchtime show and trying to bludgeon as many as possible into a performance of a sort. Come on, Agatha, Doris wheedled. You've got a few rhymes up your sleeve, and Joan, you can do your trick with the bottle and string. Don't know why you're bothering, one woman said. More trouble than it's worth. Got to have some fun somehow, Doris laughed. What with tea going on the ration as well, there won't be any pleasures left at all soon. She moved closer to me. Right, Genie, put you down for a song, shall I? I've got no voice. You have, Bab. I've heard you singing round the place, when you had more to be cheerful about any rate. Sweet voice you've got, from your nan, I expect. It is her I've heard up the Eagle, isn't it? And your auntie. Oi! She called out to the others. I tell you what, girls, let's make a real go of it and have it of an evening. How about Genie gets her nan and her auntie and her mum over here? Have a bit of a drink and that. What do you reckon? There were cheers and scattered hand claps. There's no room for a proper concert here, someone pointed out. I know, Doris beamed. The roof! Broadbent's had a flat roof with a parapet running round it. We'll never get a piano up there. Course we will, Doris said. There was a hubbub as everybody started making plans. The chosen day was Friday, 2 days away. Doris, with her little notebook, was jotting down names before they could even volunteer. While this was all going on, I saw someone come in and stand quietly watching with a smile on his lips. I guessed immediately who he was, and it was only seconds before his presence was noticed by the others. Joe Broadbent was immediately surrounded by women, chatting and giggling. A few of us carried on with our work. How have you been, Joe? How does it feel to be a pilot, Joe? Have you flown lots of planes? He was tall, and he stood with his hands in his pockets, fixing everyone's face with his eyes, their questions holding his attention. He had fair hair, cut short, and his face was pale, but smiling out of it with the liveliest and kindest dark brown eyes I'd ever seen. I was affected by Joe immediately. As he did his round of the warehouse, he seemed to remember everyone's name, their family, their circumstances. Now, here's someone I don't know, I heard him say. Who's this then, Doris? He came up to me. This is Genie, the new checker. Been here a few weeks. She's a good un, she is. Genie, Joe Broadbent. He's home on leave from the RAF. Nice to meet you, Genie. He was holding out his hand. I wiped my hand on my overall and looked up at him. His smile gave me a feeling I'd never forget. How do you do, Joe? I said, taking his hand. Getting on all right here, are you? Very nice, thanks. It's by far the best place I've ever worked. My hand was still in his, and slowly he released me. Well, I'd better let you get on, or Doris will never let me hear the end of it. He hesitated. See you around, Genie. He stayed a bit longer, exchanging pleasantries with people. I couldn't stop watching him, following him with my eyes. As he left, his eyes found me again. Feeling the blush rise in my cheeks, I thought it had to be a coincidence. He couldn't really have been seeking me out. Will he be coming to the show on Friday? I asked Doris. She grinned. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. I'm working Friday, Mom said when she got home that night, unsteady with exhaustion. Can't you swap? I called through from the kitchen. Everyone else is going. Nanny Rawson never took much persuasion to play and sing, and Lil had said that she'd come. Mom sat in an armchair rubbing her ankles. No, I don't think so. I heard her get up and pour herself a drink. Standing by the kitchen door, I watched her sit down with a glass half full of gin. You managed to sort your shifts out all right when you wanted to see Bob. She looked round at me. Mom, just for once, do something for me. She took a gulp, shuddering slightly at the strength of it. All right, then. I'd never been on the roof at Broadbent's before, but anyone could see it had been transformed. A group of volunteers had stayed on after work the night before to make the place ready. It was surrounded on 3 sides by a brick parapet, and the 4th abutted a building higher than Broadbent's. So there was a blank wall facing us. Across that they'd fixed a banner which read, "Showtime at Broadbent's, 1940. There were already a good number gathering up there. I looked round with our Nan, Lil and the kids and Mom. They'd swept the tarred roof, carried up trestle tables and chairs and arranged them in rows facing the wall and banner. On one side stood a piano. "We borrowed some mussels," Doris said, coming up to us. She said how excited she was to meet the family, Nan especially. "This is my husband, Ray." She indicated a massive bloke next to her. "Ray's our master of ceremonies. Here, Ray, get Mrs. Rawson and her family a drink, will you?" There were a couple of barrels of beer, courtesy of Mr. Broadbent, and a whole assortment of cups and glasses on the table. I couldn't help myself looking round at the stairs. Until the Broadbents were here, the place wouldn't feel complete. Some people had already sat down. Lil had gone over to the piano where Tony, one of the lads from the factory, was improvising, feeling his way into songs. He was good. Lil leaned against the upright, humming bits she recognised. Tony stopped for a minute and they talked, then tried out the openings of some songs together. Mom went over with her tumbler of ale and joined in. "Please, Mom," I thought, "don't drink too much tonight. Don't let me down." A cheer went up as a trail of coloured bulbs across the top of the banner lit up, although it was still golden daylight. "This is one show will have to be over by blackout time," Ray announced. "Well, let's get on with it then," another voice shouted. More claps and cheers. The place was filling up, and they were getting impatient. Mom and Lil came over and stood by me and Nan, leaving the seats for other people. Nan turned to me. "You look nice tonight, Genie." I smiled. "Ta, Nan." I had on the polka dot dress Mum had put together, and I'd curled my hair and pinned it so it hung nicely round my ears. Ray stepped forward. "If you don't settle down, you lot, there won't be time for any bleeding show." More cheers and raucous laughter, but gradually they settled down. I looked round to see Mr. Broadbent arrive at the top of the stairs, a young blonde woman behind him. "That them?" Mum whispered. I nodded. "She must be one of the daughters." As they moved to the front, I saw Joe behind them. He was here. My heart speeded up. "Make room now, ladies and gents," Ray commanded. In the front row, people stood and shuffled along. Mr. Broadbent Sr. and the daughter accepted the seats, with smiles to each side. "Another space here," someone called. Joe's voice came from close behind me. "I'm happy to stand, thanks." My skin was up in goose pimples. I turned round. "Hello again, Genie. OK if I stand here?" "Course. Can you see over my head?" He gave a laugh. "With plenty to spare." The first person on stage was one of the main factory workers called Dick, who kicked off with a string of jokes, trying to sound like Arthur Askey. He told them pretty well, in fact, and bowed himself off. Then it was Joan's turn. She was plump, middle-aged, and waddled forward with a length of white string, an empty milk bottle and a deadpan face, and proceeded to perform a series of antics. After a few minutes, there wasn't a person in the audience who wasn't laughing. Eventually, she gave a sniff, as if we were all completely beyond her in our stupidity, wound up the string, picked up the bottle, and marched off to loud applause. "By special request from our pianist here, we're now going to have a song from Mrs. Lillian Heaney." Lil went up to the front wearing a blush that only made her look more ravishing. She sang a couple of Cole Porter numbers. After the first one, I felt Joe's breath on my ear. She's a real find. Who is she? That's my Auntie Lil. Your aunt? He looked at me, then back at her. She's got real talent. I smiled, pleased for Lil as her rich voice poured out again over the Birmingham rooftops. The clapping at the end was at least as loud as for Joan with her bottle and string. Then there were more jokes, some told to laughs, others to groans, while helpings of ale were passed round and we polished off the last of the sandwiches. We have some guest performers here tonight. We can't give you the Andrews sisters from Hollywood, but we do have our very own Andrews sisters of Borsall Heath. Let's hear it for Doreen, Lil and Genie, and their accompanist, the much-esteemed Edith Rawson. Ray led the applause, and we went to the front, Nan carrying her accordion. We started off with sing-along numbers like Knees Up Mother Brown and the Lambeth Walk, and everyone joined in, stamping and clapping. It was going fine. I saw Joe watching us, smiling. At the end of the song, Lil sang The Very Thought of You, her voice rising to bring the rest of us in for the chorus. Mom seemed quite in control tonight, her voice high and lovely. When that was finished, Lil stepped forward again. And now, since she's our excuse for being here at all, we're going to hear from the little un. With a jolt, I realised it was me she was on about. She don't usually sing with us, but we think it's about time she joined the troupe. Judge for yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. I give you my lovely niece, Genie Watkins. I hadn't been expecting this, but I couldn't let them down, could I? I moved nearer the front of the stage, smoothing the front of my dress. Let's hear you, Genie, someone shouted. I gave a little bow and turned to Nan, giving her my choice of song. It went almost silent then, and into the quiet Nan struck up on the accordion. I sang, I'll Be With You in Apple Blossom Time, and when I'd gone through a few of the lines, I heard Nan, Mom and Lil join in with me. I tried to do it the way Lil did, pouring everything I could into it. I sang the final notes and bent over in a bow to warm applause. When I stood up, I caught Joe's gaze fixed on me. When he saw me looking, he smiled and raised his hands to show how hard he was clapping. Wasn't she lovely? Lil quizzed the audience, and they roared back. Shouldn't she sing with us all the time? Another outburst of agreement. My cheeks were on fire. For our last song tonight, make it something jolly, someone shouted. What about Run, Rabbit? And so it was, and we went back to our places, still singing. I felt proud to bursting. Joe was still clapping. That was so good, he said. Have you really never sung like that before? Only at home. I leave the performing to the others usually. It was tremendous. The sun was going down fast now. Soon the coloured bulbs would have to be switched off. After a couple more numbers, Tony played God Save the King, and everyone stood and blasted it out, loud as they could. When it was over, everyone was suddenly picking up chairs and clearing the trestle tables or trying to get to the stairs. The light was dying, and there was a rush to get it finished, make the place dark. Mr. Broadbent and his daughter came up as we were shuffling towards the stairs. That was a real treat, Mr. B said kindly. I didn't know we had such a budding little talent in the warehouse. Even the sisters smiled. It was really nice. And then they were gone. Joe turned to say a quick goodbye, which felt snatched and unfinished. As they vanished, the coloured lights went off, leaving us with only a shred of moon to see by. The street was dark and deserted. Suddenly, we heard footsteps running behind us. Someone's in a rush, Nan said. The running slowed. Is that the Watkins family? His voice. I wanted a quick word with Genie. I told the others I'd catch them up, and we were left alone. I could barely see his face. I couldn't go just like that. I told them I'd left something. I could hear his quick breathing. Would you think of coming out with me, Genie? Say tomorrow night? Joe and I arranged to meet in Moseley Village, about midway between where we each lived. I got there early. It wasn't yet 6, but Joe was already waiting for me, leaning against the wall. But when he saw me coming, he straightened up and smiled. "Began to think you weren't coming. But I'm early, it's only 5 to." We stood looking at each other. I grinned. "So, are we going to stand here all night then, or what?" Joe looked at me steadily. "We could go to the pictures if you like, or how about a walk?" "Oh yes, a walk. There's a private park." Joe pointed across the road. "My mum knows someone who'd lend us a key." We borrowed a key from a Mrs. Munro, who let us walk through her garden. At the bottom was a little wooden gate, and then the sloping edge of the park. "Isn't it lovely?" I said as we walked down together under the trees. At the bottom was a little lake. Birds chattered loudly in the trees around us. A path ran round the water. Joe turned to me. "Shall we go round?" He started asking me about myself, my family. "Doris told me that your father's missing." "Or dead. Sorry, I shouldn't have asked." "No, it's okay. It's not a secret, is it? We don't know, that's all, one way or another. Be easier if we did, 'cause then at least we could adjust to it. Anyway, Mum's got other problems." I told him about Lenny and risked telling him about Molly, and his reaction wasn't shocked like I feared. "And I've got a brother, Eric. He went with the evacuation. He's 8 years younger." We talked a lot about our families that night and walked side by side round that lake I don't know how many times. He told me the younger of his 2 sisters, Louise, was still at school, and the older one, Marjorie, worked for a machine tools firm, secretarial, and was on the verge of getting engaged. "And you're set to take over the family firm?" "Eventually, if things turn out." I told him far more than I'd expected, stopping short only at Mum's pregnancy, because I was afraid of what he'd think. We talked so long it was almost dark, and the ducks on the water were faint shadows. Joe put his hand on my arm. "Genie, I've only got a week at home. I'll have to go on Wednesday night. I'd like it so much if... Would you feel able to spend more time with me? I don't want to seem pushy, but after this week, I don't know when I'll be home again." "Course, I'd like to." "Would tomorrow be too soon?" "It's my day off, and I can't think of a single thing I'd rather do." A smile spread across Joe's face. "Excellent," Joe said. "Neither can I." For once, I put aside all that was happening at home. I was going out, and that was that. This was more or less what I told Mum. They wouldn't starve, that was for sure, one way or another. "I thought we could go along the canals," Joe suggested as we set off. "The canal system crisscrosses Birmingham, and you could get on the paths and go for miles." We walked along all morning, talking easily, pointing out the barges in all their bright colours. At lunchtime, we settled in a pretty spot and ate our sandwiches, swishing away the odd wasp, playing with strands of grass. Suddenly, Joe reached out and stroked my cheek. I wish we had more time. His arms came round me and pulled me against him. "I can't stop thinking about you, Genie. You're lovely. Do you know that?" We kissed, and I felt the beat of his heart against me, and I knew I was safe with him. That week, I spent every possible moment with Joe. His father gave me the day off the day before Joe had to go back, and we took a tram out to the Lickies. It was a beautiful day, and we had the place more or less to ourselves. This time, I had a day of wonder, seeing all the lovely parts I'd missed when I'd been dragged along by Jimmy. We walked arm in arm through the woods, smelling the pines, and found a warm patch of grass where we had our picnic. Joe lay back against a tree trunk, and I lay on my front, looking at him, trying to remember every line of his face. I moved up and kissed him. "Why don't you want me to come to your house?" Joe asked suddenly. He'd offered to pick me up from home that morning, and Mum would have been in. I didn't want her anywhere near him this week, spoiling things. My mum's not always the easiest, especially not that time of the morning. I just thought it'd be better if I came out on my own. But I must meet her properly sometime. There's plenty of time for that. It's just, the way I feel about you, I want everything to be right, with everyone. My mum and dad are happy we're walking out together, and I'd like yours, your mum that is, to be as well. See? I don't think my mum's got much idea how to be happy about anything. I must have said this in a bleaker voice than I intended, because Joe drew back, eyes searching me. I wish I didn't keep seeing you look so sad. I'm not sad. I'm happier than I've ever been in my whole life, and that's thanks to you, Joe. He looked at me for a long time, then spoke the words his eyes were already telling me. I love you, Genie, and I love you more than anyone, ever. We held each other close. Teresa was here, Mom said when I got back. What did she want? I don't know. It must have been urgent for Teresa to leave the shop. I had to go to her late as it was. There was still light showing in their house. Teresa opened the door cautiously. When she saw it was me, she pulled me inside. They're safe. She wasn't alone. Carlo was with her. Teresa laid a letter in front of me. Look, from my dad. They've been in Sutton Coldfield all this time. Mickey's letter was short. It said he and Stevie were in a transit camp and that he'd been a bit unwell, whatever that meant. Uncle Matt had been moved somewhere else. Mickey made a joke about holiday camps and sent his love. I looked up at Teresa. Thank God. I went to the station with Joe on the Wednesday night. Walking tall in his uniform, kit bag on his shoulders, he looked older, and I suddenly felt shy. New Street Station was crowded, full of traffic and clamour. Holding Joe's arm, I passed through the crowds with him until we found his train. Saying goodbye was awful. Joe put his bag down and took me by the shoulders. Genie, tell me you'll wait for me. You'll be here. Course I will. I was fighting back tears. I love you, Genie. You do know that, don't you? The whistle shrieked along the platform. This is it then. I'll have to get on. He bent to pick up his bags, throwing them through the door. Straightening, he turned. Darting forward, I pulled him into my arms, covering his face with kisses. I love you. I don't want you to go. Joe held me tight, kissing me back. My love. As the train moved off, I ran with it, kissing his hand through the window, hearing his laughter. My last sights of him were his dark eyes meeting mine, lips blowing a kiss. End of Side 2. Side 3. Every day the news from Gloria was full of the Battle of Britain. But for the moment, Joe was safe, posted somewhere up north. He wrote to me every 2 or 3 days, telling me about the routine of the squadron, day-to-day things, but he always found something to say specially for me. Those bits I'd read again and again until I could remember every word. Apart from news about the factory, it was hard to think of what to say when I wrote back. All I wanted was to fill the letters with endless repetitions of I love you, thank you for loving me. Molly and Len's wedding arrangements were causing quite a kerfuffle. This was partly because Gladys Bender was making sure they did. Gladys pestered us from morning till night whenever anyone was in. She'd never in her dreams expected her daughter to find a mate, and now she got the chance, Molly was going to be married with bells on. Here she comes again, we'd say, seeing Gladys steaming across in her slippers. Then she'd be hammering at the door. I thought it'd be right for you to see to all the food afterwards, she announced one morning, since I've got my hands full with Molly to look after in her condition. We can do some food, can't we, Mom? I looked at her. Mom nodded. It's not as if there'll be crowds, is it? There might be quite a number, actually, Gladys announced. After all, I'm one of 15, and no one will want to miss seeing our Molly tie the knot. The wedding was booked for 10 days away. Gladys had said, "Molly can't possibly be showing if we do it that soon." Lil had snorted at this. She's such a size she could get to 9 months without anyone being the wiser. Lil had some doubts about this marriage. First of all was the fact that Len and Molly were, for the time being, going to carry on living where they were, in their separate homes. "Don't seem right," she said. "Lenny doesn't like the idea of moving in with Molly somewhere," I told her. "He wants to stop at home with us." "Where are they going to sleep?" "Search me," I said. When I came to the Spini shop that Saturday, Vera was bustling round with a broom. "Teresa's round the back. Is Carlo there?" Vera smiled. "You've noticed then? He seems to be around a lot. Well, he's not here now. Lovely boy he is. I just wish Teresa would open her eyes and see the lad's crazy about her. He'll be gone and she still won't get the message." "Gone? He's joining up?" Teresa was on her knees, washing the floor in the house. She looked up and grinned. "Thought you were up to your eyes in wedding dresses." "No, Gladys is in charge of that. You coming, aren't you? I wouldn't miss it for anything." "How's your mum?" Teresa asked cautiously. "In her right state most of the time. I can't get through to her at all since Joe and me." Teresa sat back on her heels. "You really serious about him?" I nodded. "I can see you are. You're different." "What about Carlo?" "I've always liked Carlo. It's just... he's always been there." She looked into my face. "I suppose I thought it'd be more dramatic, like in the pictures. He's always so polite, hardly touches me. A gent, I suppose. Shy, I think. I know I don't want him to go. I do know that much." Lil and I did our best with the church decorations. The flowers I bought were a mix of colours. We managed to arrange a magnificent spray on the stand and put vases of flowers round to decorate the altar and side tables. Lil backed down the church, surveying what we'd done. "It looks beautiful. Molly'll love it, bless her." The wedding morning dawned bright, and we were all up and running before we were half awake. Nan was down by 6:30 carrying plates of stuff with mutton cloth over them. I was brewing up tea for everyone. Gladys soon made an appearance, of course, sailing in with a tray of little cakes. "Straight out of the oven," she boomed. "I've been up since 4. "How's Molly?" Nan asked. "Got her head over a pail at the moment," Gladys reported. "She'll be all right." We had to get Lenny out of bed and get some breakfast down him. Nan had starched him a collar and she fixed it for him, pushing in the studs. "Chin up, Len. It's a bit tight," she said, struggling. "How's it feel?" "All right." He was grinning. She helped him into his jacket, fastened his tie for him, soaped his hair flat and combed it. "Now, let's have a look at you." Nan stood there in front of her enormous, damaged son, looking him over. Finally, she said, "You'll do." The wedding was at 11. We walked down to St Paul's in good time, Mom with her arm through Len's, explaining it all to him for the umpteenth time. "Church looks very nice," Nan said approvingly as we walked in, and it was true. The blaze of colour from the spray at the front looked beautiful. Our side of the church was empty until we arrived, but over on Molly's side there were quite a few there, all dolled up. Nan sized up the numbers, wondering if we'd got enough food. Lil was coming down the aisle towards us with Tom and Patsy and Kathleen. She looked marvellous. They settled in the pew behind us, and I turned to give her a smile. Behind them, Teresa came in with Carlo. She gave me a little wave, and they sat in the third row. The lady organist struck up, and everyone stood. Mom pushed Len to the front where he waited, lost looking for a moment, and then, as he caught sight of Molly, beaming like a sunflower. Everyone swivelled to see the bride, watching as she swayed along the aisle on the arm of an uncle. The dress was white, a bit cheeky of Gladys considering, On her head, she wore a cloth hat with a veil trailing down over her face. Len's face was brimful of delight. The service sped past. I could tell Mum was on edge, but Len said his "I do's" with such feeling that there was a ripple of laughter. He fed the ring onto Molly's pudgy finger, lifted the veil and kissed her. Molly turned, smiling coyly. They were married. "Heaven help us if all that lot come back," Mum panted as she and I sped down the road ahead of everyone else. The minute we were back in the house, she was swigging at the gin bottle. "Mum!" "What? God, I needed that. What you staring at?" "Don't get drunk, Mum. Not today, please." The first knock on the door was Nanny Rawson and Lil with the kids. Then followed the bride and groom, and a thick stream of Gladys and Molly's relatives. The place was soon heaving with them all. Mum shifted them all into the garden. Nanny Rawson came out holding plates of sandwiches. "Right," she boomed. "There's more of you than we bargained for, so make sure everyone gets a share, all right?" After that, the party got into full swing and I went round offering food. Molly and Len stayed in the garden with the crowd. Seeing me, Molly clasped me in her arms. "You my little niece now, Genie?" Lenny and I had a hug too. "I'm married now," he announced. "You are, and soon to be a dad." I squeezed his hand. "I'll get you some grub." Inside, the house was full of chatter and smoke. Teresa and Carlo were there, and I realised I hadn't had time to see them, but I caught Teresa's eye and waved as I went through the back room. And then a noise broke through all the celebrating, a high, rising and falling whine. "God almighty," Lil cried. "It's an air raid." No one knew what to do. "We won't all fit in the Anderson," I said. "Get Len and Molly in there, and the kids," Nan said. "The rest of us will just have to make do." For the next few minutes, there was a low-level panic. Some of the guests went off to a public shelter. Gladys had a cellar, so a few of her kin went across with her. Mom and Nan went out to the Anderson. The rest of us sheltered in the little cupboard under the stairs and under the tables front and back. The raid went on for 3.5 hours, the plane sounding so loud and close that we all stopped talking and held our breath. We heard the crash of explosions in the distance. When there was a lull, we'd poke our heads out and call to the others. In the back room under the smaller table were Teresa and Carlo, and the first time I popped in, I found them wrapped tight in each other's arms. Thought I'd better just leave them to it. The sun was low in the sky by the time the all clear went. Everyone was in a mad mood after the hours cooped up, and we ate trifle and wedding cake. As the evening wore on, those who were left sang, led by Nan and Lil. Mom managed to get through the evening with barely a sniff at the bottle. Len and Molly were the picture of young love, Molly still in her frock, and I don't know exactly what changes took place under the table in our back room that afternoon, but as we were singing, Teresa and Carlo sat smiling and holding hands, their shoulders touching. Life would have been perfect if only my dad and Joe could have been there too. Later that week, a letter arrived from Joe telling me he was being reposted to join the fighters on the south coast, and I could not rest easy again. Gloria reported the RAF had lost 34 planes that day. The Blitz began for us at the end of August. The Luftwaffe shifted from daylight raids to night bombing. They bombed the market hall, leaving desolate, smoking rafters and a terrible mess. The next night, we spent mostly in the Anderson, Mom, Len and me. For hours we listened to the drone of the planes, the bangs of the bombs, and our ack guns firing. The following morning I was at the table with Len, both getting breakfast down us so as to get off to work. There was a rattle at the front door. Post. Would there be a letter for me today? Mom was already out of her chair. "I'll go." She padded off into the hall in her slippers, and I heard her grunt as she bent down. Then she moaned as if in pain. When I got there, she was sliding down the wall in a faint, a card slipping from her hand. "Mom?" I sat her up with Len's help. She groaned again, her face white. I picked up the card. Recovering from wounds. Prisoner of war. France. Alive. My father was alive. "It's from Dad!" I shrieked. "He's alive!" Mom was going into shock. "Oh, God," she kept saying in a distraught voice. "Oh, my God." I was so excited that day I could barely keep still. "My dad's alive," I told everyone. At the factory, they shared it all with me as if they were part of my own family. I was alone in the house when Mom came in from work that night. Len had decided to stop over at Molly's. Instead of heading straight for something alcoholic, she sat down in the back room, stone cold sober. "What's up, Mom?" "I went to the welfare this morning," she said in a faraway voice. "The woman said I couldn't give a baby up for adoption without my husband's consent. I don't know what to do." That week, worrying that her pregnancy might be beginning to show, Mum handed in her notice at work. On the 7th of September, London had its first big air raid. 430 people died that night. So many we could barely take it in. I had a letter from Joe, sounding tired out, but full of affection. Then nothing. He'd been writing every other day when he could. Something had to be wrong. I couldn't talk to Mum about it. She was too wrapped up in herself. Only Teresa knew how sick with worry I was. Carlo had left for his army training, and she came round to see me. "I now know how you're feeling," Teresa said. "If I thought something had happened to Carlo, I'd be exactly the same." At the factory, my eyes and hands worked automatically, head down, not joining in with the jokes. They kept trying to cheer me up, bless them, but even though I tried to put on a brave face, I was consumed by worry. "Genie!" A call passed along the warehouse. "Mr. B wants you out the back." If it was good news, it'd have come right in. By the time I reached the door, I was trembling so much I could barely get it open. On the other side, I gasped. Joe was standing across the yard, half smiling. "Genie?" I didn't remember crossing the yard. I might have flown for all I know. I was holding him, kissing his lovely face. "Joe!" Tears flowed down my face. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." I couldn't let go of him, couldn't stop saying it again and again. "You're here, really here." He only had 4 days, and we spent every moment we could together. That first evening, Mr. Broadbent asked me to come over and spend some time with them. I was nervous about meeting Joe's mum and his sisters. What on earth were they going to think of me? Joe introduced me to everyone. His mum and Marjorie and Louise. He made it very clear I was someone special. We sat together on their sofa. Mr. and Mrs. Broadbent were in chairs on either side of the fireplace. Mrs. Broadbent, very pale and fragile-looking, was quiet and shy. "I hear your father's been in contact," she said. "What a relief that must be." "It is, it's been so long." Louise, Joe's younger sister, went off to the pictures. Soon after, Marjorie drifted off as well, leaving the 4 of us sat round on their coffee-coloured furniture. As it grew late, Mr. B said, "Are you going to run Genie home?" When we'd climbed into his father's Austin, Joe said, "It's good to be home, but I've been dying to have you to myself." Then Joe took me in his arms. "How do you fancy a day out tomorrow?" he said, as we pulled up outside our house. "Dad might lend us the car." "The car?" I sat up straight. "Pick me up as early as you can. I don't want to miss a single moment." Apart from the Lickey Hills, I'd never been out of Birmingham before. Joe drove us out to Kenilworth, me in a state of high excitement. "There's a castle," Joe told me, "and lots of country round to walk in. I can't believe this, I kept saying. It's not a very marvellous day, though, he said, looking up through the windscreen. As the edges of Brum faded behind us, I was full of exclamations about the fields, the fresh air, the old cottages in the villages. Joe parked in a side street in Kenilworth, and we walked through the little town with its pretty houses and gardens. It's beautiful, I sighed, and Joe laughed. You're easy to please. He drew my hand through the crook of his arm and kissed me. We walked round all morning, talking and laughing, and then had a fish dinner before going to see the castle at the edge of the town. We walked round inside the quiet shell of the castle walls. Afterwards, when we set out along a path into the fields, the sky turned to lead. It wasn't long before enormous drops started to fall. "Oh, no," Joe groaned. "Here, Genie, have my coat." "No, I'm all right. I didn't care if I got drenched to the skin." Joe took my hand. "Look, over the other side, we can shelter." We ran together across the field, laughing as the rain streamed down our faces. The barn was almost full of straw bales. Joe picked me up and lifted me onto a ledge, which was about up to my chest, then climbed up himself. At last, we were under cover. We settled down together on the fresh, prickly bales, water seeping from our hair. Still getting my breath back, I lay back. This is the most wonderful, exciting thing I've ever done. Joe smiled at me. Shouldering his coat off, he leaned over and wiped my face with his handkerchief. Then he mopped his own face. Neither of us spoke for a time. I watched him, wondering what he was thinking. Joe had never said or done anything to offend me in any way, never pushed me to do anything more than I wanted. Yet as I lay looking at him, my body was trembling with love for him and with need. Joe turned and leaned over me, and in his eyes I saw the same overwhelming longing. I put my arms around his neck, shaking. "Are you cold?" I shook my head. "No, not cold." He looked down at me. "I love you, Genie, more than I can say." We lay kissing and touching, pressed tight together. Joe undressed me with shaking fingers, and his shaking made me love him more. Afterwards, we lay under his coat on the scratchy straw, warming each other. "Joe, I want to tell you something." I spoke in a rush. "My mum's having a baby, and it's not my dad's. I need you to know, that's all. I never told you before because I was ashamed and scared of what you'd think." He let this sink in, then kissed my hair. "Genie, you've nothing to worry about with me. It's not for me to judge her. People will, though." When we heard the rain stop, we dressed in our wet clothes. As we climbed down onto the sodden grass, Joe took me in his arms again. "Genie," his face was serious, "one day I want to be able to wake up with you in a bed in our own home, our marriage bed." On his last day, I asked Joe to come to my nan's. It was Sunday afternoon and everyone was there. Nan, Lil and the kids, Mom, Len and Molly. Mom was in control, though I kept eyeing her to make sure. "Hope you'll take us as you find us," were Nan's first words to him when we arrived, and he did just what she asked. With everyone there, it was a tight squeeze, but we all fitted in. Joe talked to Mom and seemed to cheer her up a bit. It was a wonderful afternoon. Cups of tea and cake, sing-songs led by Nan, which had Molly and Len rocking from side to side. Later, we had a visitor. A little black and white terrier with bright liquid eyes was peeping in at us. Joe, sat by the open door, was the first to notice. "Who's this then? Hello, mister." "Never seen him before." Lil snapped her fingers at him. "Come here." The small, wiry body came in, wagging a stump of tail. Then it launched itself into Len's lap. "Oi!" Len laughed as the terrier pushed its wet nose against his ear. "Where did he come from?" Lil said, bending to stroke his back. "Not from round here, is he, Mom?" "Not as I know of," Nan said. The dog went round the room sniffing everyone's legs. Then he was in my lap, tongue on my face, and I cuddled him. He felt warm and comforting. "Wish we could keep him," I said. "I expect he belongs to someone," Lil said. "Could be a stray." Joe reached round and stroked him. Nan got up to put another kettle on. "We'll just have to see. Really and truly, we need him round here like an hole in the head." I didn't want that afternoon to finish. I kept shutting my mind to the thought that not only would it have to end, but that Joe was leaving today. We'd come so close, and now we'd have to be torn apart again. As we all left Nan's, the dog followed. "He likes you, Genie," Lil called from the door. "He's got good taste," Joe whispered. When we got to Brunswick Road, he was still there, like our shadow. "Can we keep him, Mom? Please? He'd be company." "Well, I suppose if he belongs to someone, he'll take off home later." But he ran into our garden at the back, sniffed round and cocked his leg as if he owned the place. "He's staying then?" Len asked. Mum's eyes followed him as he did a tour of the back garden. "Looks as if he might have it in mind." I couldn't face the railway station with Joe this time, so we said our goodbyes on the way to his house, where he had to go and change and get his kit, but it was even more terrible than before. Hard as I tried not to, I cried. Joe held me and kissed the top of my head. I could tell from his silence he was as emotional as I was. The leaves started to fall, and Mister was still with us. From the day he followed us home, he was a fixture. I called him Mister because that was the way Joe greeted him that day, and when I thought of Joe holding and stroking him, it was like some contact with him, apart from his letters, which were what I lived for these days. Whenever I got home from work, Mister was there, jumping up to greet me. Mom was calm for a bit then. It was as if she'd put herself through so much agonising and worry that her mind had blanked out. She drank, but for the moment, not as much as before. In mid-October, there was a raid every night for 2 weeks. We weren't ready for the first one. At the sound of the siren, we grabbed hold of things we thought might be useful, a lamp, thermos, rugs, coats, and struggled down the garden into the shelter, seeing the searchlights criss-crossing in the sky. We had no idea how long it might go on. Len sat perched on one of the bunks as the planes droned overhead, then lay down and went to sleep. Mom and I sat on the bunk facing him. With every explosion, our heads ducked. If it was close enough, you felt the impact under your feet. It was terribly frightening. My hands were sweaty, stomach all churned up. When the all-clear finally sounded, we crawled out into the rank smell of smoke, looking round to see what had been destroyed. From the second night, Mom made sure she had a bottle and spent the time trying to drink herself into oblivion. I sat there, glad of Mister to cuddle, thinking of Joe and trying to swallow the panic which rose in me like bile. More than once, Mom drank until she passed out, and I was left sitting alone, as Len could sleep through anything. One night, when we got to the shelter, Mom found that her gin supply was disastrously low. "Christ, I can't get through it with only that." She gave a crooked smile. "Do us a favour, Genie. Go down the outdoor and get some more." There were planes overhead. I stared at her in disbelief. "I'll go for you," Len said. "No, you won't, Len," I snapped at him. "None of us is going anywhere." Mom pouted like a child. It was a heavy raid that night. The first wave brought incendiary bombs rattling down, beacons for the high explosive bombs following close behind. The smell of smoke found its way to us. Mom sat slumped on the bunk, staring at Len, who was sleeping. Later in the night I blanked out for a time. I don't know how long, but suddenly I awoke. The battering of noise was still going on, the planes and ack guns, the whining and crashing. The lamp had gone out. I sat up. Mister was still lying beside me, but Mum wasn't there. "Mum, where are you?" I felt around in the dark. Nothing. "Len, take Mister. I'm going to see out there." I wrenched the door open and stepped outside. The sky was copper-streaked with puffs of white from the ack-ack fire and the cold beams of the searchlights. But my eyes were fixed on Mum. She was standing with her back to me halfway down the garden, staring up at the sky, her arms stretched out. "Mum, for God's sake!" I ran to her. "What are you doing?" "Thought I'd just get it over with," she murmured. There came a massive bang very close by that snatched the ground from under us, and we curled on the ground, our hands over our heads, eyes tight shut. The noise seemed to go on for ages, crashing and splintering with explosions of glass. When we stood up, tongues of fire were shooting up from the street. There was already the sound of fire engine bells. Mum and I dashed into our dark house. There was glass everywhere. I heard Mum gasp, cutting herself. The blackout blinds at the front were in tatters, and through them we could see that a great swathe of the opposite side of the road was gone, just matchwood and rubble burning. Mum's hands went to her cheeks. "Look." She couldn't speak for a moment. "They got it. Not me. Someone else got it." When the light came, the three of us walked out dumbly into the dawn to see our familiar street changed utterly. "Look at it." Mum stood with her arms folded, a rough dressing on her cut finger. God in heaven. Gladys and Molly's house was still standing, but not much further along a great block had been blasted out of the terrace, the inside walls of some still left standing, the rest smashed to charred rubble. There were people out along the street. Len banged on Molly's door, and after a time Gladys opened it and the two of them came out. "Wasn't it awful?" Gladys said. She looked along at the shattered houses, her eyes filling. Len put his arm round Molly, who huddled close to him. Along the street, a vicar stood comforting a man who was watching the rescue squad, his face full of fear. We could hear sawing and men calling to each other. A team was waiting with stretchers. A horrible, dank smell hung over everything, and mixed with this, the sickening smell of gas from broken pipes in the houses. A shout went up from amongst the wreckage. "Here! There's someone under this lot!" There was urgent activity, men sawing, lifting chunks of masonry. After a time, they called a nurse through to give an injection. "Morphine, I expect." Mum shuddered violently. The rescuers were pulling a body from the house where they'd heard the tiny sounds. It was a woman. At the sight of her, Molly turned and buried her face in Len's chest. They lifted the woman out as if they were handling some precious treasure. She was unconscious now, drugged out of her agony by the morphine. I knew her face. Mrs. Deakin, a widow in her late 60s, who'd always been kind. Silently, we shuffled back to our house. And then it stopped. After 2 weeks of raids every night, suddenly there were days of no siren, no shelter. It felt really peculiar. One morning, Mum came down, grey-faced with tiredness and nerves. "I've decided. I'm never going out in that shelter again." I gave a sarky laugh. "Not till the next time." "No, never." "Mum?" I peered into her face. "You all right?" There was a long silence. "I'll be all right." I put tea in her hands. "Why don't you go over to Nan's today? Have a bit of company." "Don't fuss, Genie." She spoke dreamily. "Just get off to work." I wanted to go round to Nan's that afternoon, but I felt I ought to get home to Mum. Some instinct made me run half the way there. I don't know what I was afraid of. When I clattered in through the front door, Mister came at me like a cannonball, yapping and jumping round my legs. "Mum, where are you?" I needed to hear her voice. She was in the kitchen standing by the stove, cooking, and the place looked as if she'd had a tidy up too. "Thought it was high time I did a meal," she said. I smiled with relief. You feeling better? I'll be okay. I picked up Mister, who was still frantic for attention. Did you go to Nan's today? I popped over, picked up a few things on the way back. She was stirring the pot, looking so frail standing there in the light, pregnant, the hair loose. We'll wait for Len, she said. He can eat with us tonight, not at Molly's. She'd done stew and spuds, egg custard for pudding, and the three of us sat together round the table, Gloria playing to us. Mom didn't drink a drop all evening. When all this is over, Mom said to Len all of a sudden, you and Molly'll have to get yourselves a little house somewhere. If there's any left standing, I joked. She looked solemnly at me. And you and Joe. He's a very nice boy, Genie, the sort who'll look after you. She gave a bit of a smile. She was so calm. Perhaps I should have seen that as odd, but I was just glad. Things felt normal, whatever that was nowadays. We sat listening to Gloria, and then Mom took herself off to bed. As she passed my chair, she rested her hand on my head. Good night, Genie. I was the last up. I switched the lights off and left Mister snoozing by the remains of the fire. A high wailing sound woke me. Mister was howling somewhere outside. I opened my window. It was very dark. Mister? How'd you get out there, boy? There were more yowls and the rasp of his claws against the back door. OK, I'm coming. On the landing, I smelled the gas. I tore down the dark stairs. When I opened the kitchen door, the rush of it set me coughing and gasping. I could hear it hissing in the dark. Groping towards the back door, I tripped over her legs. I got up and struggled with the back door key, knowing now what was happening, taking gasps of air as I got the door open. Mister tore inside and disappeared somewhere into the front, yelping and howling. Everything was automatic now. My steps across the kitchen, one hand over my nose and mouth, the other going to the dial on the cooker to shut it off. The hissing stopped. With more strength than I knew I had, I bent and pulled my mother's body from where she was lying, head resting on her crossed arms in the greasy oven. Don't die, I sobbed. Don't you bloody well die on me. Lifting her under her flopping arms, I carried her into the garden, her feet bumping down the steps. I found the crocheted blanket and laid it over her. Then I knelt, feeling her wrist, finding a tiny pulse like a bird's. Mister was running in circles, barking. I picked him up. We've got to get help, boy. Down the road, I found a working phone box and called an ambulance. They asked no questions, most likely guessed most of it in any case. They took me to my nan's, said they'd go round to Len first thing. It was 3 a.m, and I had to tell Nan what had happened. Nan sat down and stared ahead of her. It was Lil who did the crying for all of us. Mom was a long time in hospital. At first, I was just scared she'd die, and she came very close. She lost the baby. They said it was another little girl. For days she lay barely conscious, and we'd sit with her in that ward at the Queen Elizabeth. The doctors said she'd lost the use of the right side of her body, the right arm completely, the leg showing little flickers of life. The first time she came round, her right eye wouldn't open, only half her mouth was working. Oh, God, Genie. She couldn't say any more. Tears seeped down her face. Mom. I could only bow my head, resting it on her, overcome by her misery and my own shame. They were bombing every night again now. Mom and the raids. That was what made up our lives. There was a second wave of evacuation, and Lil decided to send the children. A friend in Stoke said she'd have them while things were so bad. Nan and I went to the hospital every day, Lil when she could. I told Mr. Broadbent my mother was ill. He told me to have days off, take my time. I was staying at Nan's and Len was at Molly's. All other aspects of life faded into the background. Something happened to me during those days. Everything had changed from before, like a coin flipping over. The thought of seeing Joe appalled me, revolted me even. Such things were not meant for me. Not even my family knew the depth of pain I was carrying. I couldn't look Nan in the eye. I thought she was angry with me. I'd let her down, let us all down. I hadn't looked after Mom properly. I should have known how near the edge she was. Late one night, after the all clear went, I heard Nan's slow tread from the scullery. After a moment, I heard a spoon chink against a cup and knew she was taking Turley's saline to settle her stomach. I waited for her to find her way to bed, but instead she went and opened the door. Picking up a chair, she carried it outside, quietly latching the door after her. When she didn't come back in, I felt my way to the window and moved the blackout curtain. Right the other side of the glass, I could see the back of Nan's head. She was sitting out there, quite still. It took me some minutes to pluck up the courage to go out to her, but I couldn't go on living with her the way I was, not with the shame I felt. She didn't turn her head when she heard the door open. She was looking up at the moon, her hands folded in her lap. I stood by her shoulder. "Can't you sleep, Genie?" "No," she nodded. "Nan, I'm so sorry." She looked round at me. "Genie, love, what have you got to be sorry for?" "I let you down. I was supposed to be looking after her. It was my job. I should have been able to save her." Nan gave a sigh. "There's no blame on you, Genie, love. She's been a poor mother to you, and you've been better to her than she ever deserved. It's a hard thing to have to say about your own daughter, but it's the truth." After a week, I went back to work. I felt I owed Mr. Broadbent. "How's your mom?" they all asked. I made up something about how she was poorly and getting better. After work, I went back to our road. At home, there was a letter from Joe. I picked it up and stared at it. I couldn't open it, couldn't stand to read his words of love when I felt so hateful. I knew that I owed it to him to write back, but I couldn't. There was nothing in my head except the bombing and what had happened to Mom. I may have had Nan's forgiveness, but I couldn't forgive myself. I put the letter in a drawer up in my room, still unopened. I didn't deserve Joe, and now I'd lose him. He wouldn't get an answer from me, not from someone who died inside. On the night of November the 14th, the Luftwaffe flattened Coventry, bombed and burned it to the ground. The day after, Nan and me went up the hospital. Mom just lay there, face white as the sheets, her one open eye blank and empty. The blankness looked like an everlasting sadness that no one would be able to take away. "We'll soon have you out of here and back home where you belong," Nan said. Mom's good eye looked at her. "I want to go home," she whispered, mouth twisting against her will. "Soon, Mom." I took her hand and she closed her eyes. I gave Mr. Broadbent my notice, speaking to him formally, not meeting his eyes. "But why, Genie?" "I've got to look after Mom. There's no one else." "I'm sorry, love. Serious as that, is it?" I nodded. "I'll need to be at home for good now." Mr. Broadbent came round from behind his desk. "Genie, you don't look well yourself, love. You've got so thin." It was true. There were pits under my eyes you could crawl into. Everyone's tired, aren't they? I still couldn't look at him. You can't be anything else with the nights the way they are. They had to carry Mom into the house when they brought her back. Lil was with me. I couldn't have stood it on my own. Lil was in a state, seeing Mom with her arm hanging all floppy by her side and that dead half of her face. "Oh, Dor." She knelt down and put her arms round Mom's waist. Mom brought up her good hand and stroked Lil's hair. She looked across at me as I stood watching. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I'm so useless to everyone. I hugged her. The doctor said that in time Mom could recover, perhaps not completely, but she could learn to walk and probably to talk properly again. Only time would tell. For the moment, she sat for hours, not even trying to talk, listening to Gloria. If it was the last thing I did, I was going to make sure she got better. I was going to give it everything. I had to save her. The only person in our family who was happy was Len. Molly was 7 months pregnant, and her big belly fascinated Len. He was all over her, feeling the babby moving and stroking and kissing her. Mister loved Molly and curled up on her enormous thighs whenever she was around. Len and Molly often came over and sat with us. Gloria on, completely comfortable with everything. No restlessness, no worry about Mom, nothing. That was Len and Molly, happy in chairs forever. Teresa found time to call in and visit us. Teresa hadn't seen Mom since she'd come home and couldn't keep the shock out of her face. "It's terrible, Genie," she said. "Is she going to get any better?" I told her the little bit of hope we had. In the hall, as she was preparing to go, she turned to me. "I've got something to tell you. Carlo's asked me to marry him." He'd written to her, couldn't even wait to come home and ask. I didn't have to ask what the reply was going to be. I flung my arms round her. "I'm really happy for you, Teresa. Nice to have some good news for once." One afternoon, I answered a knock on our door to find Mr. Broadbent standing there. My knees went weak. "Genie?" I couldn't ask him in. Mom was asleep in a chair and I didn't want him seeing her. I stood stiffly in the doorway, my expression tight as an iron door. "Sorry to bother you, love," he said, "but Joe's very anxious about you. Said he hasn't heard from you for ages. He asked me to see if you were all right." I looked past him. "I'm all right." Mr. Broadbent seemed embarrassed. "He's heard about the raids, of course." He paused. "Are you sure everything's all right, Genie? Joe's worried. You mean a lot to him." "I can't write," I said. "Just can't. You better tell Joe he's made a mistake. Tell him to forget me." "Oh." He stroked his hand back over his hair. "I didn't know it was like that." I was moving back into the house. "Got to go, Mom's calling." I shut the door and leaned on it, closing my eyes. One evening, for a break, I left Len to look after Mom and went to visit Nan and Lil and the kids. When I left Nan's, feeling guilty that I'd be so late home, it was already dark. I strode along the Moseley Road. The sky was clear and there was a moon. Bomber's moon, I thought. God. It was as if my thoughts set it off. Suddenly the sirens wailed round me so loud I wanted to scream. People on the street started rushing and I could see threads of light from torches combing the pavement. I needed to get home quick, get Mom and Len into the shelter. I started running. The house was dark, so I ran to the side gate and stumbled down the garden. In the distance, there was the sound of planes and the crunching boom of explosions. Before I got to the shelter, a bomb came down very near and the sky lit up and the ground buckled. Head down, I covered the last few yards, pulled open the Anderson and flung myself inside, to find it empty and dark. There should have been matches, but nothing was there. I felt around the floor but couldn't find them. It was pitch black. "Where are you, Len? Why aren't you out here?" I perched on one of the seats, boiling with anger and frustration. Did I have to do everything? Alone in the dark, the shelter seemed to close in round me. I pulled my legs up, hugging my knees. When it lets up a bit, I'm going in, I thought. Couldn't do it now, it'd take too long to move Mom. I lost track of time. I wasn't sure how long I'd been in the shelter. Seemed like hours. I couldn't keep my mind on anything but how scared I was, because it was all much worse on your own. I didn't hear it coming. Just knew 1 minute I was sat there. The next, I was choking, buried, my mouth and nose full of soil. Every muscle of my body clenched in a mad, fighting panic, wrenching and twisting. Clawing with my hands, I felt air above and fought my way out, hawking and spitting. The next thing I remember was running up the street under an orange sky. A warden loomed from the shadows. "Get under cover, for God's sake! Our house!" I stood pointing. He steered me to a doorway. "You can't hang about. Got anywhere to go?" Then I was tearing along the Moseley Road again, ducking in and out of doorways as the sky seemed to tear apart above me. We were down there as soon as the all-clear sounded. Even though it was still dark, Nan, Lil and me holding each other, braced for the sight. They were working on our house, and once more there was the smell of gas. Morning dawned slowly, and with the light, people came out into the road, murmuring to each other. An ambulance waited nearby. We stood in silence. There was nothing to say. We'd done the things we could do, called at the Benders. No Len. He'd stayed home. Lil had questioned the wardens. They couldn't tell her anything. Not yet. As we stood there with Gladys and Molly, cups of tea were given us by people whose faces we didn't even see. I heard Molly sobbing. It took a long time, eyes straining, listening to the grunts and shouts of the rescuers, feet crunching on glass and rubble. Then suddenly, "Quiet!" The man in charge of the team waved his hands. "I can hear something!" We strained our ears. Tiny mewling noises were coming from somewhere in the wreckage. The men looked at each other. It was Mister. My spirits lifted for a second. But what about Mom and Len? Apart from Mister's whining, there was nothing. Just quiet. Deathly quiet. They brought Mom out first, covering her bloodied face with a sheet. There was no need to ask if she was dead. A ripple passed through the scattering of people, a sound of horror and sympathy. Nan's hand came up and clasped her mouth as they carried her daughter away. She didn't move. She was waiting for Len. They had to move more rubble from the crumbling heap that was our house. Mister didn't let up whining. Len's body was soaked in blood. When she saw them bring him, Molly threw herself forward, falling on him, a great howl coming from her that seemed to crack the air apart. "No!" She kissed him again and came up with blood on her face as they prized her away, belly shaking with sobs. Gladys drew her into her arms. When they brought Len to the ambulance, Nan walked forwards, pulling her coat round her. Lil and I followed. "It's better if you don't," the nurse started to say. Nan held up a hand. "It's all right, love. I'm not going to make any fuss." She pulled the sheet back. Len's eyes were half open, his face cut by glass, but not disfigured. "Good lad." She ran her hand over his matted hair. "You've been a good un, Len. A good son." She gave him a last, long look, then covered his face again and started walking away. "Mom?" Lil took her arm. "Where are you going?" "Home. There's nowt to stay here for, is there?" "I've got to stay," I said. "For the dog." Mister was freed shortly after. When I called to him, he rushed into my arms in convulsions of quivering and licked my face. It was only then my own legs started trembling. It was all I could do to stay standing. Later that day, there was a knock at Nan's door. It was Mr. Taylor, our neighbour. His house was still up. "I'm sorry, love, for what's happened," he said to Lil. "Sorry for barging in on you like this, only they found this under the stairs. I thought you'd like to have it." In his arms was Gloria, without a scratch on her. We laid Gloria on the table. Nan sat by her, stroked her hand over the dusty veneer, then she laid her head on her arms and wept. I was ill after that, and the days disappeared. My throat was so painful I could hardly swallow. It must have been all the muck I'd had in my mouth, and I had a very high temperature and delirium. My dreams were always awful. Lil came to me, her hand cool on my forehead, trying to quiet me as I mumbled out, feverish, all the things I blame myself for. "It's all right, Genie. None of this is your fault, love. The only person to blame is Adolf bloody Hitler. That's who's the cause of it. No one could have done more than you. You've just got to get yourself better now." Then the fever left me, and I lay in bed weak and thin as tissue paper, looking round at the bare walls. I barely had the strength to move. "Look." Lil came in one day carrying a card. "From Victor? From your dad?" She held it in front of my eyes. A card from a POW camp addressed to Mom. His health was good, it said. I looked up at Lil. "Of course he doesn't know. We'll have to tell him." She looked out of the window. "Yes, we will. Poor Victor." Teresa came and her face in the doorway looked deathly white. "You better, Genie?" "Think so, Tar. Bit wobbly still." "What's up?" I pulled myself up on one elbow. She sat on my bed. "Stevie's home." She spread her hands over her face. "Dad's dead." "Your dad?" She lowered her hands. "They didn't even bother to let us know. They sent Stevie out to do it for them." "When, Teresa? What happened?" "Stevie says a fortnight ago he caught pneumonia. No one would do anything. They didn't get him to hospital until it was too late." "God, Teresa, I'm so sorry." Teresa wiped her eyes. "I've been to see you before, but you was too poorly. You look really bad." "Felt it." "I'm sorry. Your mom, Lenny." "It's terrible, Genie." She shifted closer and we put our arms around each other. Most of the time I stayed lying on the bed in a weak, dreamlike state. Mister came to keep me company and I liked his warm weight by my feet. Now and then I found the strength to go down and sit by the fire. I switched Gloria on, stroked her sometimes. She was all that was left of home as it had been. Lil and Nan were just getting on with it, keeping going. The shop opened, the jobs got done. Nan's hair was suddenly white. Lil, too, looked haggard. We didn't speak about Mom or Len much. It was too terrible. Instead, we talked of Molly. She was heartbroken, poor thing. "We'll have to give her any help we can," Nan said. "After all, I'm the babby's grandmother, aren't I?" It was clear to see that if ever there was a little babby going to be swamped with doting Nans, this'd be the one. It was nearly Christmas, and we got ready for it out of habit, though there was nothing to celebrate. Lil tried to decorate the house a bit. I watched her hang snippets of holly on the mantel. Suddenly she turned and frowned at me. "Why haven't you opened your letter, Genie?" Our post came redirected now from the old house. I shrugged, looking down. "Don't, Lil." "Don't what?" "I don't want to talk about it. I thought he'd stop writing, that it was over, but then this other one had come." Lil knelt down in front of me. "You loved him, Genie. It was clear as anything." I stood up. "I told you, I don't want to talk about it. Just leave it." I went up to bed again, swallowing hard. Mister followed me, his claws loud on the wooden stairs. On Christmas Eve, we sat round the fire, Nan and Lil drinking hot toddies. I stuck to tea. Mom had given me a horror of drink, and I still wasn't well. I felt feverish again, my hands shaking, so I could only just control the cup. "Look at the state of her," Lil said. "You poor kid." We had carol singers round. The singing brought our emotions to the surface, and we couldn't stand much of it. We gave them a couple of coppers to get rid of them. When they'd gone, I came over dizzy and had to sit down to stop myself falling. Lil looked at me anxiously. "You're not right yet, are you?" "No, I feel pretty bad. I'm going to turn in." I lay in the dark, feeling the fever come over me again in waves, shivering one minute, pushing the covers off the next. Thoughts came, chopped up, distorted. Everyone paraded through my mind. Dad, Len, Mom. I was asleep, yet not asleep. I knew Mister had jumped off my bed and pattered off downstairs barking. Gloria must have been on. I heard music, then voices talking. I wasn't sure how much time had passed and whether I'd slept in the middle of it. There was a light in the room, the glow of a candle, very vivid. Not a dream. Lil came to look in on me. Very drowsy. My eyes kept opening and closing. "Can I have some water?" I managed to say. I heard her talking, low voices. Then the cup came to my lips and I sipped. "Tar." I opened my eyes. Not Lil. Joe, sitting on my bed, face full of anxiety. I heard myself gasp. "Genie? Joe?" I was crying, a great wash of tears that I couldn't stop, releasing everything that had been locked in me over the past weeks, the terrible loss, the pain and guilt. He knelt by the bed and took me in his arms. "It's all right, my love. Shh, my sweet one." "I'm sorry, Joe. I'm so sorry." I clung to him, this miracle of love and forgiveness who'd appeared out of my dreams. "Mom's dead, and Len." "I know. Your Auntie Lil told me. You've had a terrible time." He held me, stroking my hair. I looked up into Joe's face. "Do you really love me? Still? After all this?" "Darling Genie, I could never not love you." We kissed, his lips pouring new life into me. I cuddled against him in a haze of joy. After a time, Joe took me back in bed and kissed me. I put my arms around his neck. "Don't go," I said. "I might wake and find I dreamt you." "You didn't dream me. I'll be back, love, every minute I can be. Now we've just got to get you better." "Oh, I'll be better now. I'll be better tomorrow." My eyes followed him to the door. He turned, his lovely smile across the room more powerful than any medicine. "See you tomorrow. Good night, sweetheart."